Ready? Okay. Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals. Public hearing for June 2nd, 2016. We'll begin with the special order calendar. Decision items. Item number 1, 85353BZ, 2402 Knapp Street, Brooklyn.
Good morning, Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of Eric Platnick, PC.
Good morning. I think we've received everything we were looking for. So on a motion to grant?
Vice Chair Hinkson.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number 2, 229-84BZ, 7528 Queens Boulevard, Queens.
Madam Chair, Commissioners Jeremiah Candreva from Trotman Sanders. We received a letter yesterday from the fire department and have addressed those concerns. I believe the fire department has accepted my submission.
Yes, we've seen the letter and we are okay. So on a motion to grant on condition that the applicant does not have to file, the application for the fire department. So we're good. Sorry, I read the wrong note. So on a motion to grant.
Vice Chair Hinkson.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Item number 3, 31806BZ, 4905 Astoria Boulevard, Queens.
Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of Eric Platnick, PC.
Hi. I think we've settled on we're going to condition 10 years dating back to the expiration.
Right.
Right, so, motion to grant on condition that the complete curb is installed along the rear containing the plantings, and that the parking area is striped. Motion to grant on those conditions.
Vice Chair Hinkson.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Item number 4, 47-10BZ, 895 Zarega Avenue, the Bronx.
Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of Eric Platnick, PC.
Again, we have a couple of conditions, which I'm sure you heard yesterday.
Yeah.
Grant on condition that the landscaping be in the ground, not in planters, and the metal fencing is painted and kept graffiti-free, and bollards are filled with concrete.
The owners actually asked if that condition about the bollards filled with concrete can be conditioned on concrete or asphalt to match what's there right now. They weren't sure exactly what material was there right now. They want to fill it in so that it's the same.
I think the plans say concrete.
Concrete?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. Because they weren't sure, so.
Yeah, but it just doesn't look like it was done, so
Right.
I think...
But they will be filled.
Excellent.
Whatever's on the plans.
Okay.
Excellent. So, a motion to grant on those conditions?
Vice Chair Hinkson.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez.
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown.
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda.
Aye.
Thank you.
Continued hearing items. Item number 5, 1255-80BZ, 3533 31st Street, Queens. There's an adjournment request in this item?
Do we have a date for adjournment, or don't we know?
We don't know.
Okay, so why don't we give them a month? So let's adjourn this to July 12th with a submission on the 28th of June.
New cases, item number 6, 17304BZ, 5 West 37th Street, Manhattan.
Good morning, Jessica Rubenstein on behalf of Eric Platnick, PC. We heard your comments.
You heard our comments yesterday?
We did. I'll wait till everything's distributed. The first comment, I believe, was with regard to the property line as depicted on the tax map. It shows that the property line is 98.75. The plan showed 98.9. We believe the previously approved plans had an error by showing the 104.
Okay, I think it was 98 feet, 9 inches.
Right.
Right, so not .9, but 9 inches.
Oh, that was the
But
confusion.
I
Okay.
also think it was 104.79 feet on the other side.
It was.
So
the
is
tax
it,
map.
is it 98 by 75 or 104?
98 by 98 by 75
Okay.
is shown on the tax
So,
map.
all right, but you've made that correction.
That's on the existing plans right now that we submitted with this application.
Okay, great.
In terms of the violations, since we submitted the response to the notice of comments in December, the 5 open ECB violations have been resolved. Of the 4 open DOB violations, 2 have been resolved, including the May 30th, 2014 violation for the elevator. Now there are only 2 remaining violations. One was issued on November 30th, 2007 for a violation type that says unknown. The second was issued on January 13th, 2016, it says construction, realized it was for occupancy contrary to the C of O.
Okay,
And that violation will be rectified upon the approval of this application.
all right. So we've got the violations under control.
Correct.
Okay.
In terms of the fire alarm, we have printed out photographs of the installed interior fire alarm system. We can formally submit those. And the language on the plans on A103 does say that an approved interior fire alarm system has been installed. In terms of the services offered at the spa, the last grant did mention that manicures and pedicures were provided. However, the spa now only offers massages.
So that's a
Saunas.
change.
And dry
That was-
sauna?
That's what.
Dry sauna and steam room, correct. But that was also a comment at yesterday's review session. So the plans show 2 sauna rooms, and that's because they're general saunas. One's hot, one's dry, and one's steam.
Okay, so, and you've made that clear in your papers that this is a change in the operation?
We can clarify that in the statement of facts. Lastly, there was a question about the operator's name listed in the prior BSA approval. The corporate entity filed as the lessee with this application is the New York Midtown Corporation, which is consistent with the last approval. The name of the spa, however, is New York Health Spa. So there is a difference just
So the
between...
ownership entity hasn't changed?
Correct.
It's just the name of the spa, or doing business as has changed?
Yes.
Okay. Good, and I think we also asked for signage analysis?
Yes, it's included in the packet, and we
Okay.
submitted that with the response to the notice of comments.
Great.
I believe that was it.
Anything else?
Well, about the Special Enforcement Unit inspection and how they found massages being done by unlicensed therapists?
So we submitted 12 massage licenses on May 10th, I believe. That should be in the file. We'd be happy to resubmit those.
Well, do they correlate to the names in the Special Enforcement Unit inspection
Yes.
report?
Yes, and those violations have been cleared. That's how the ECB violations have been cleared up.
Okay. If you could clarify that, that would be
Okay.
helpful.
Great. Will do.
Do we have any speakers on this item? No speakers? I think we can close pending any additional information that we're supposed to get.
That'd be great.
All right, so motion to close.
Vice Chair Hinkson,
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez,
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown. Aye. Commissioner Chanda.
All right, so is there anything that you needed to get to us? I don't
believe so, so
think
we
so.
can respond relatively quickly.
Yeah, maybe just redo your facts and findings to clarify some of those points,
Yes.
and I think we should be fine. So if you could get that into us, you could do that relatively quickly,
Yes.
right? So if you could get that into us by, can you do it in a week?
Sure. That'd
Then
be great.
maybe we can get this back for decision on June 14th. That work?
That works. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's easy.
So it's a continued hearing, correct?
No, we closed.
we closed.
It's a decision
Oh,
item.
sorry, yes. Okay, item number 7, 80-05BZ, 49 West 33rd Street, Manhattan.
Morning, members of the board, Douglas Kopp for the applicant. I know that there were a number of questions.
Could you move the mic up a little bit, Mike?
Sure, I apologize. I know there were a number of questions yesterday The simplest one being the resolution history reflected that it was approved in 2015. Obviously, it was 2005. We'll be happy to resubmit that to reflect the correct date that the resolution was approved. With respect to the question about the square footage of the establishment, it's correct that the submitted square footage did not include the square footage that's in the cellar. I believe it's about 8,000 square feet is the correct square footage, and we'll be happy to resubmit to that effect.
Please do, just make sure that it corresponds with what the last
Yes.
last grant was.
Right, absolutely. I do know that the proposed conditions are needed. I've personally gone down to the Department of Buildings to try to get the plans that have been submitted since the resolution was granted. The Department of Buildings does not have all of those records. I've been in contact with a number of the engineers and architects that submitted those plans. I hope to have copies of the new conditions in the few upcoming weeks. The hours of operation, the hours of operation that are reflected on the website, the 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. are the accurate hours of operation. The 10 p.m.
That's a change from the 10 to 10
Yes,
that you've been
yes,
granted.
they're operating until 2 a.m. That's only for clients that have appointments to that time. They do not take anyone that comes in off the street past 10 p.m., but it is until 2 a.m. That's correct.
So you'll need to make an amendment.
Yes, yes. Signage analysis and zoning, those will also be submitted. As far as the investigation, the change in the ownership, I have a copy of the principal questionnaire form from March 6, 2014. I believe that was already submitted and approved by the board. I'm not sure if that, I'd be happy to submit the questionnaire form again, but.
Yeah, could you submit that again and we can review to make sure that it's the same entity?
Absolutely. As far as the ADA compliance, the final C of O was obtained and a place of assembly was obtained for the location, so the site is fully ADA compliant. The fire alarm system also compliant with FDNY regulations. Interior photos, we're working on those to get a better explanation of the interior of the site. Those we should have shortly as well. As I know that there were also a few questions about just the general operations of the site. I'd be happy to submit a more detailed operational plan to speak about them briefly here today, though. The building itself is a 4-story building. The physical culture establishment is in the cellar. The first and second floors, the third and fourth floors are an English learning center that are unrelated to the establishment itself. The first floor on the street level has a reception area, men's and women's locker room. I knew that there was a question as to the separate gendered facilities. The spa itself is unisex. The only areas that are segregated by gender are the locker rooms. Those locker rooms do have showers. There are restrooms and dry steam and ice rooms that are also unisex on the first floor. On the second floor, there's a water treatment area, there's a lounge, there are 3-foot massage stations, 5 facial treatment and massage stations, and 2 restrooms. In the basement, there are body scrub stations, 2 of those, and couples rooms that contain a shower and a dry sauna area.
I think Commissioner Shonda and I had a question, I guess, about the locker rooms.
Right.
That the plan doesn't really look as if you separated out the boys from the girls. So if your representation is that there are separate locker room areas, I think when you revise the plans, make sure that it's pretty clear, because right now it looks like one big
Area.
happy fest, yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so definitely take a look at that.
Sure. I believe that's everything.
Any further questions? Any speakers on this item? Seeing no speakers. How long do you think it's going to take you to get us the information?
Can I'm sorry, I just want to go back to
Please.
what I had observed at the site. Can you please ensure that the pathways from the
The
elevator
egress.
are
Clear.
clear of
Sure.
all obstacles.
Yes. To the timeline of the submittals going forward, I hope to have everything complete within the next few weeks.
Few weeks means,
2 at most.
so can you get us something by June 22nd, let's say? That's a Wednesday?
That would be fine.
And that would put you on for July 12th.
That's fine.
Is that all right? You got
Yes.
that?
Thank you.
June 22nd, July 12th. Okay. Item number 8, 23807BZ, 5-17, 47th Avenue, Queens.
Good morning, Vice Chair Hinkson and Commissioners. My name is Gary Tarnoff from Kramer Levin, the applicant. I'm here today with Sebastian Persico, Senior Vice President for Finance Administration at the CUNY Graduate Center. On behalf of CUNY's Graduate Center Foundation Housing Corporation, LIC, requesting extension of term for the variance. We were present at yesterday's executive session. 2 issues were raised. I'd like to address them. First, as our application points out, CUNY acquired its portion of this site in July 2015, less than a year ago, although they were planning to do that for a period of time. It's a question of financing. Purchase price was approximately $22 million. They're now in the process of seeking financing in order to develop the site, and that's the reason primarily for the additional extension, but we're very hopeful that we'll come up with a means of doing that during the next period. An issue was also raised about the conditions of the site, namely debris and graffiti on the wall. CUNY is committed to being a good neighbor. As the application points out, since they've acquired it, they've replaced all the sidewalks surrounding their portion of the zoning lot at the request of the community. I looked at the photographs that were taken in February and in December. The fences were largely clear, although there was some graffiti. I was there 2 months ago. I must say I didn't see a lot of debris, and the fence whatever was there did not register with me as being unsightly. In any event, as I said, they're committed to keeping the site clean and free of graffiti. So I have a letter from the Graduate Center committing to do monthly inspections and to paint the fence as necessary, which I want to hand up to the board. And we're making that commitment to the board, which if the board so chooses, could be a condition of any further grant.
Good, watch that.
Excellent. Do we have any other further questions for Mr. Turner?
When do you think construction will be able to begin?
Well, that's a very good question. I really don't have a date, but we are actively pursuing finding the additional finance by fundraising, other methods. CUNY has, as you know, I'm sure you may have read, there are tight budgetary constraints at the present time, but this is something that they made a very large commitment to in terms of buying the property within the last year and spending a lot of money, and it's a very high priority to get graduate center housing in order to get the best students for our facility, for CUNY. So I don't have a definite answer, but as I said, it's a high priority.
Are there any speakers on this item? No speakers? Let's see, do you have to give us anything, or we're pretty good? Just the letter, and you'll put this in the
Yes, I
normal
just
way.
handed up 8 copies, but I can,
But
You can email it to submit.
We can
Okay, I'll
deem
email
it
it to
submitted,
submit, that's
but
fine.
yeah, email it to submit, just so that we have it
Of course.
correctly in the record. That would be fine. I think we can close the hearing. Motion to close.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Motion to grant.
Vice Chair Hinkson?
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appeals calendar, decision items, item number 9, 300-0008A, 3935 27th Street, Queens. Can we defer to July 19th?
We'll defer this to July 19th.
Continued hearing items, item number 10, 65-15BZ to 6615A, 361 Central Park West, Manhattan.
Do we have an applicant?
Mr. Corby.
Maybe
Mitch.
we don't have an applicant.
That's right. Mitch, can you tell that gentleman to come in right there? Mitch, you ready?
You're up.
I turned on the lights.
Really? No.
Sorry. Bit of congestion out there. Thank you so much, Vice Chair and Commissioners. My name is Mitch Corby. I'm an attorney and an urban planner for this matter. I think you know, hope you know, and hope you recognize that we have some additions to our team on this project. Most principally, and this is very little about me, most principally a new financial analyst who's worked with the prior analysis and added to it. And I think most importantly has taken a fresh look at all of the numbers, some of which I know you're concerned with. We're going to focus today primarily on the B finding, as I understand from executive session and certainly prior testimony and prior hearings that your concerns are fundamentally about the B finding, the so-called financial analyst.
The E finding.
And the minimum variance finding, which of course is connected to the B finding. I am pleased to know and to note that the commissioners have recognized that we passed muster with the A finding. That is to say that our property is unique and that unique physical condition presents a hardship. I'm also pleased to note that the commissioners have expressed support for our community character finding, the so-called C finding. That is to say that the addition of 34 residential units, and I should add that we began with 39 and now we have 34 units. I should add that we had no community facility space in this building and now we have 8,000 square feet of community facility space. So I'm pleased to note that the commissioners recognize that the addition of 34 units to one of the most densely populated neighborhoods in the city will not, wreak havoc with the character of the community, and in fact will add to the character of the community. So we passed muster with those two significant findings. Today you're going to hear a very thorough analysis and review of the E and B findings, and I think we've done an extraordinary job in a fairly rapid time frame in addressing the questions. And now, we heard several questions yesterday. Those questions we're going to respond to today, and we're going to do a very good job, I think, at responding to them. I may want to have, if I can, the opportunity to submit that information in writing to you, but I'd like you to open up to the the responses that I think we have. And Michael Miola, who's our financial analyst, once again, building on the work that's been done before, taking a fresh look at it, I think we'll be able to cogently respond to your questions. So I'd like to just segue right to him since, yes.
Before you segue, I think Commissioner...
I just wanted to say a little something other than what was said before,
Okay.
yesterday, before you even begin.
Sure.
I just wanted to say that in reading the financial analysis, one thing that was problematic for me
Right.
is your acceptance of the as-of-right analysis and everything that went with it, and then your decision to make a change on all of the development costs in the new report, not understanding the ramifications that has on the credibility of both that report and the first report, because there are a number of assumptions in that first report as regards the as-of-right analysis that were accepted by you, and so therefore cannot justify those changes in the proposed. And I'm speaking specifically to the interest rate. You can't have an interest rate of 5% and agree that that's fine for the as-of-right, and then jump to 7%, which I already have stated I didn't see any justification for that jump and don't want to open a precedent of allowing that jump in future financial analyses, but also understanding that that jump is in contrast to what you have already accepted. So if it's good enough for the as of right, which is considered a more risky project, then I don't understand why you would jump an interest rate for the proposed, which is seeming to be what you would want us to think is definitely a more feasible project and definitely having less risk. That being said,
Okay.
I'm willing to hear what you have to say, but I also want to make one other point about the development costs in the new proposal. When we had our last meeting, the issue was primarily with getting the sales prices right because we felt that the condos were being undervalued.
Right.
We had spent a lot of time on the development cost side of the equation, trying to whittle it down to the costs that we felt were acceptable. And the board settled on that amount of, I believe, $94 million. We did not want anything changed to that. And so the fact that that has changed and has jumped up to the point where now this project has a development cost that is increased over the original development costs, lead me to believe here that this is just another case of shifting the numbers around to try and make the return look minimal, which is a problem for me. And it has been a problem from the very beginning. So I wanted to be very clear of where I'm coming from. I can't speak for my fellow commissioners, but this is how I see it. We've had several reports. In each report, ever since we came up with our first set of criticisms concerning the site value and the development rights, as well as concerning the condominium prices, we have seen several iterations that have done nothing but shifted that revenue around, shifted the costs around, increased the costs, and then shifted the revenue around on the other side. It's very hard to find credibility in a new set of numbers given that.
I completely understand, Commissioner, and I appreciate that. And that's precisely why we have, in addition to the team, and a fresh look at the materials. I get it. We had been through several hearings. I've not participated so directly, but I've been there and I've seen the YouTube, so I completely understand, and I feel it, and I get it. We all do. This is an extraordinary project, a unique building with a unique set of features and costs, an extraordinary opportunity, and something I think is the right thing to do. And I think the Landmarks Commission has recognized that, and I think that generally the commissioners do as well. On the other hand, I completely understand and appreciate the points you're making. And for myself, it's very hard for me to hear that you believe that the numbers have shifted. That's a difficult thing for us to hear. I get it. We're going to do everything we can to reassure you, to make you feel right about this. This is the right thing to do. This project is the right thing to do. Our numbers are correct. They're accurate. We're going to be open. We're going to be honest. And we're going to be direct. And if there's anything about this that appears shifty, if there's anything about this that appears awkward or wrong, you certainly let us know. That's clearly not our intention. This is not about us trying to move things around. This is not a game of three-card Monty. This is the right thing to do. Our numbers are accurate, and they're good, and we've got good people here involved in this. So that being said, I just want to reassure you that that's our intention. And that's been our approach as we've taken a fresh look at this. So I'd like Michael Miola to come up. He's got a very thorough analysis. He spent a lot of time on this, some of it done, burning the midnight oil, which is why I would like to be able to submit this in writing. So I'm going to sit down and let Michael do his work, and I know you'll have questions for him, and he's prepared. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to testify, Vice Chair Hinkson, Commissioners. My name is Michael Miola. I'm a partner in BJH Advisors, real estate consultants. I understand you have questions about certain aspects of the financial analysis, as you just made clear. I'll focus my comments on those areas. Our firm was engaged to perform a financial analysis of the conversion of the building into residential and community facility condominium units. Our firm regularly advises government agencies, nonprofits, developers, and others on a variety of real estate matters in New York City and the surrounding metro region. One of our core services is advising on the financial feasibility of projects. We regularly develop financial pro forma plans, including detailed sources and uses of funds, income and expense projections, capital budgets, including hard and soft costs. Of course, we don't generate all these inputs ourselves. We rely on appropriate third-party and other professionals, such as construction companies, cost estimators, financial professionals, et cetera. But we have the expertise and the experience to put these plans together and to efficiently understand whether the plan makes sense. When we were engaged, we were instructed to work with the design team and the owner's representatives to develop a complete financial picture of the project. We did not start completely from scratch, in part because we were brought in during the middle of the application and because certain components, as you know, were already in place, such as the as-of-right development scenario. So what we are essentially asked to do is to review the work to date and to work with the team and the ownership's executives to prepare a fresh financial picture of the project. Before I go into the specifics, I'd like to make some comments about the nature of a financial analysis. When we say we're preparing a financial analysis or a project pro forma, what we are saying is we are looking forward. It's an estimation. This estimation is a combination of actual facts, projections and estimations based on specific items such as quantities of masonry or steel, et cetera, as well as industry standards and allowances. These three elements are all present in every pro forma in varying degrees of precision. The point that I'm trying to make is that every financial pro forma, every one, is a combination of facts, estimates, and assumptions. There's no one standard or right way to prepare a financial pro forma, and every project is a little different. The most typical standard that we see in practice, and that's where we live, is in practice, is will the pro forma pass muster with the bank? The general approach is to use the best possible financial information available. Where actual costs are available, we use actual costs. Then we rely for estimates of project costs and the work of relevant subject area experts, such as McQuilkin for cost estimation, mortgage brokers for loan costs. Finally, there are certain costs that are in every pro forma that are pure estimates. We see enough projects that we are comfortable saying, for instance, that in a typical ground-up development project, at this stage of development, a 5% developer fee is appropriate, would pass muster with lenders and investors, and in appropriate situations would pass muster with regulatory agencies such as HPD or HDC, again, just for example. Again, I would like to stress that for certain items, the highest quality reference isn't a cost estimate, an estimation guide or service, but a review of numerous projects to understand what level of cost and compensation is required and accepted in the marketplace. Going into specific items. So could you have the project schedule?
I just have to say that the previous financial analyst says all of the same things that you just said. So why would I discard what they said and believe you? Why you?
Sure. Because this is what we do all day long.
That's exactly what the other person says.
And because we can back up and have supported every item in one matter, in one way or another. The first point that of clarification is this question of what is the appropriate project analysis term, and perhaps I would have spared the commission and staff some confusion if I'd stated clearly in the report in one place this was a 4-year analysis. It does state it in a couple of places.
It also says 5 years because it says 1 year
correct.
Pre-development,
Right.
2.5 years to
Right.
construct, 1.5 years to
Right.
sell out.
Right.
Previously, the other financial analysis was 40 months.
So those, and again, I recognize that there was some imprecision in that language. Those terms were not meant to be additive, and it didn't say 5 years. Those were illustrative. But again, when we calculated the return on the project at 18.4%, mechanically, I divided that by 4 years to get to the 4.6% annual
Right,
return.
no, I understand
Right.
that, but why are we now 8 months longer?
Sure. It's going to be hard to see this, and we can submit it. But we took the time to lay out a project schedule, and assuming that we were to be approved this month.
Mr. Mayola, could you
Sure.
take the microphone with you as you
I'm so sorry.
stand by the door?
Well, I'm just going to
Thank
point
you.
to it, and then if the commissioners are interested in the pre-development schedule, the architect can speak to it. Assuming we were to be approved this month, or in July 1st, we would start. It would take 6 to 8 months of pre-development including construction drawings, borings, site investigation, et cetera. We'd be lucky to...
Excuse me, I just gotta get my glasses.
Sure. Right.
Well, the question is that what makes your scheduling and your analysis of the scheduling any different or better than the last one we saw, which I believe also gave us a sort of a Gantt chart and
Well, I mean, again...
had different times for different things.
Again,
So
we were...
what makes this more illustrative for us?
Sure. Well, we were asked to look at, as a practical matter, how long it would take to develop this project from start to sell out of the units. The architects who have been working on this project for a number of years have laid out all of the steps that it would take to get into construction, and I think we would be able to do that in the first quarter of 2017. We talked to ownership's construction company and as well as construction firms the architects work with, and they estimate a 24-month build-out period. And then importantly, and we have the brokers from Corcoran here that can speak to this if you are interested, we will not be able to start marketing the condominiums until we have a model unit, on-site model unit constructed. So
I don't
there's-
understand why, because
Sure.
so many other developments actually sell out almost in the beginning when they're starting construction. Why wouldn't you start marketing these units somewhere early on with
I
some
mean-
kind of mock-up?
Sure, I will let Tamir come up and speak in just a second, but in summary, this is a specialty product, and you can't sell from plans. But I think I'd actually like to have Tamir come up and talk to this point.
Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Tamir Shemesh from the Corcoran Group.
Andrew Wachtfogel from the Corcoran Group.
So we are advising the sponsor, the developer, that people do not buy off plans these days. They want to see the actual product. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, there were several projects that tried to do it by plans the way it used to be, and they were turned out to be unsuccessful. So they waiting until they construct the building and have a model apartment.
But how come we read in the newspapers so many articles about projects that are in the process of development that are half sold out already, even before they've finished taking the construction fencing?
Not lately.
Not lately?
Yeah, which project did you read about?
157, 432.
But they started sales about 2.5, 3 years ago. The market is very different today. The 56 Leonard, which is not far from here, also started about 2.5, 3 years ago. Same with 150 Charles, but today, for example, give you 111 East 57th Street. They had a sales office. They didn't start construction yet. Did not sell anything in the last year or so, and then they closed the sales office and waiting until it be constructed and have a model apartment. It's unfortunately the market has changed, and
Then my other question is, why so long for 34 apartments? This isn't a large development, 100 apartments.
we were retained just in the last week or so, and no, because they're seeking obviously a professional opinion about stuff, and we actually disagree with 1.5 year sellout. We think that it's going to be compared to what's going on in today's market, and we have a director in our analyst department. We actually think about 2.5 and 3 years of sellout.
2.5 to 3 years?
Yes.
So can you then provide backup for that statement in terms of other developments of similar size and type and how long they have taken to sell out?
Sure. Andrew, do you want to discuss, for example, 360 Central Park West, just across the street?
Yeah, so I have a couple of examples of some buildings on the Upper West Side that are conversion buildings, which is, as this is a conversion of the existing structure. So an important distinction is conversion buildings versus new construction buildings in the sellout period, and along with the sales office. So, conversion buildings typically have multiple different layouts that people need to see for themselves to purchase off of plans, whereas new construction buildings have a very similar unit lines that run all the way up. For example, 432 Park, as you mentioned. So it's much easier for a buyer to envision that unit as it's built out before, and then there's 20 or 30 of them in a row. And this building has multiple different kinds of units in it, so these kinds of buyers prefer to see it in person more so, especially because a lot of them are very different, so they kind of want to see those once they're there, which explains kind of the waiting for the sellout period to wait till the building is nearly complete with construction. As Tamir mentioned, buyers like to walk through the units and see them in this kind of a building because it's different obviously than a normal construction building. So a couple of examples to highlight for you in the sellout period. So typically we look at how many units will sell per month based on comparable buildings, and then we kind of take a look at how that extrapolates to this building. So on the Upper West Side specifically, so for some conversion buildings, the Chatsworth, 344 West 72nd Street is a rental to condo conversion building that launched in 2014. They have sold a little less than 1 unit per month since they launched in 2014.
Okay,
But that's a rental.
one thing also has to be distinguished. This is a specialty building.
Absolutely.
This is not your typical 15-story elevator apartment building. So I want you to focus on other specialty buildings that have undergone conversion, landmark buildings. Do you have that with you?
Well, the fact that it's specialty building, it actually makes it more for the buyers to see the actual apartment.
Yes, but it also carries with it a certain cachet that one would want to take advantage of even before you get a shovel in the ground. I mean, I continually get, from Corcoran, thank you very much, I continually get these little brochures under, in my mailbox of either new construction or conversions that, haven't even begun to get into construction, but I got the nice glossy folder and the whole 9 yards, and I too can have my apartment for, $5 million. But, so I asked the same question, that you be more specific. Going from a rental to a condo is not a conversion in the sense that we are looking at a conversion. This is a conversion from a church building, into that is, got a lot going for it, right? It's got beautiful stained glass, it's got interesting shapes inside, it's all of that stuff. So that's a very specific type of conversion. So I think we want to hear from you your unique perspective on something that's unique.
It certainly makes the buyer want to see how the stained glass is going to be in their apartment. We have several challenges with the facade, with the LPC and windows, so we make the buyers want to understand what they actually see from their windows, what light they get, which actually makes it much harder to sell off plans, because the buyers will not be able to envision, as we said, 432 Park, 157, it's a pretty straightforward floor plans. You can take a drone out, show photos of the views, of the light. The situation is because it's so unique, the buyers will demand to see the actual apartment to understand what kind of views and light they get from those windows.
And the reason I wanted to highlight these buildings that are rental to condo conversions is that's much easier for someone to conceptualize what the apartment will look like in a building that was previously a residential building. And in our opinion, in our experience, it's easier to sell units that are easier to conceptualize as a residence, both because it's already there existing and people kind of see how that is, as opposed to a church building that is not necessarily conceived as a residential building. So
do you have an example of what we're looking at now, of a building that was not residential, that is somewhat special, that has been converted to condos, and what that strategy was?
Well, he mentioned 344 West 72nd Street, which is the Chatsworth. And that's an existing beautiful pre-war building, very unique. If you want to go online and see that, sure.
Just tell me which...
344 West 72nd Street.
Just so we don't stray from the question, the commissioners were asking if a non-residential building, if you guys have an example of a non-residential building which has been converted in your analysis?
Yeah, because a conversion of a rental, even though it's a gorgeous, beautiful building, and I know which one you're talking about, it's not really the same as this.
That's more of a traditional...
I personally, yes, I did 233 17th Street, which is a building that was constructed in 1887, and that was a convent. And we did the sales, and we had to wait. We tried to do a soft marketing, which was unsuccessful based on plans, and then we actually had to build the apartments and bring buyers. So it's 233 East 17th Street. I personally did it as well.
East 17th or west?
East 17th Street.
And for our record, to compare the units per month on that project, do you know what the sale rate was for units per month?
It was 13 units, and we sold it in about a year and a half.
So it took a year and a half to complete.
To sell, from beginning of sales, and we had a model apartment to sell. One of the last units that actually was sold in that building was unit number 5, which used to be the chapel of that project, and buyers just did not have the imagination to understand what we're selling over there until we actually completed it and showed the high ceilings that we had, etc. If you go online, you can see 233 17th Street.
Yeah.
And it was, in my opinion, less challenging because the windows were pretty large and we were sitting on a park, Stuyvesant Park.
Like to continue your
Actually,
presentation?
I think Misha Hunter would like to talk to you about conversion of religious properties briefly.
Thank you.
You guys done?
For now.
Business cards? Business cards for you too, so I have the correct spelling of your name, please. No, I just need your spelling of your name, please. Thank you.
Misha Hunter Burkett, Lee Saltzman Architects.
Just speak up a little bit.
Yes, yes, I'm just getting over a cold.
Sorry.
That seems to have happened a few times coming here. Misha Hunter Burkett, Lee Saltzman Architects. I just had a quick word that I wanted to say. Our office has been retained by the team for preservation consulting to the project. And I know that the Corcoran team has been brought in rather recently. But a previous submission that we worked on that was submitted to the BSA was a chart documenting religious property adaptive use projects that the Landmarks Commission has had jurisdiction over. And I think it might be beneficial for the Corcoran team to review that chart, which documents, I forget how many properties, because of course this is a phenomenon that's happening more often than we might like. Not only in New York City, but elsewhere in the country. And I think really it speaks to the extraordinary difficulty. I can't speak to the costs because that's not my area of expertise, but it might benefit the commissioners to receive a review from the Corcoran team of that documentation to supplement the record showing other properties that were religious properties that were then converted to residential use.
Thank you, Misha. So I understand that there were 11 items in the development budget that were asked for amplification on. I'll go through them as quickly as I can. And of course, stop me and ask questions at your convenience. As noted in our report on the construction hard cost budget, McQuilkin re-estimated the project with the unit reduction and the increase in community facility space, which resulted in a reduction in the hard cost of $300,000. On the appliance allowance, I realized after submitting our report that the way that appliance package was presented may have been a bit confusing. McQuilkin, in their budget estimate, included an allowance of $10,000 per unit for appliances. When we reviewed this, both myself and the ownership identified this as a number that was low, and a $10,000 allowance per unit for appliances in a standard condominium conversion would be appropriate. But this is an extremely high-end project, and it's going to have high-end appliances to market these units appropriately. We estimated the kind of appliances that we'll need to purchase will be a total of about $35,000 per unit. This sounds like a lot of money, and it is. The brands we're talking about would be essentially a Wolf and Sub-Zero package. As a check on our estimate, we, this past week, obtained a quote from a major volume retailer of these appliances, which I can submit if you like. By way of example, a 36-inch Wolf range that is specified for this would cost $8,700, and its companion range at $2,200. The 36-inch Sub-Zero refrigerator that goes with it is $10,180. Additional appliances include a dishwasher, wine cooler, coffee station, and a washer-dryer unit. The combination of these appliances was just over $35,000 per unit. As noted in our report, we added a 5% owner contingency. I've never, in 20-plus years of working in the economic development and real estate development business, seen a development budget that did not have a contingency. Every bank and every investor group will demand a contingency, and particularly at this level, a 5% contingency is probably conservative/low. We increased the developer and managed development fee overhead item to be closer to an industry standard, which can range from 3.5% and up. The construction manager's fee, builder's profit, was increased to 8% of project hard costs to reflect pricing level we see in deals of this complexity. We note that this item is particularly sensitive to competitive pressures at bidding, and it could come in lower again at the time of bidding. Project legal fees were estimated based on discussions with owner's general counsel and a comparison that I did of estimated legal bills and projects of this complexity, which involve construction legal, partnership and development developer legal, lender legal, as well as landmarks and BSA legal, of course. As noted, the construction loan interest reserve changed dramatically. Ownership identified this as an area that in a project of this complexity, this is a condominium conversion with inherently a lot of risk, and that an interest rate of 7% and a 3.5-year period would be appropriate. We got quotes from 3 firms. We submitted 2. We didn't, at the time of the submission of the report, we didn't have time to get the third one. They each came in at 7%, assuming 70% loan to value. The mortgage broker and lender fees are industry standard, and we obtained those from quotes from the mortgage lender. Title insurance, we got a quote from from the ownership's title insurance and reduced that by $100,000. On real property tax, it's kind of interesting. What we did there was we actually pulled the tax bill for February of 16. The tax bill was $233,843. I can, of course, submit that.
Excuse me, going back to the insurance, I think I mentioned yesterday, McQuilkin already has insurance in the estimate. Could you?
Sure, that's the construction company's insurance. So there would be developer insurance as well on top of that, which is specifically excluded. On the development period real property tax estimate, again, we actually pulled the tax bill. We multiplied that times 4 to get to the $900 and change thousand for the real property tax. And that's probably conservative because we assume that there's no change in the tax rate over the next 4 years and that there's no reassessment. I mean, it's likely, in fact, that as the building is built out, that in the second, third, and fourth years that the assessor will increase the tax assessed value and therefore the tax rate. Those are the items that were identified for question. We can support each and every one either through a submitted quote, submitted documentation, or reference to industry standard and a variety of projects of this type and sort. Happy to answer any additional questions you may have.
I don't have any further questions because what still remains is the fact that your group has signed off on all of those other assumptions that came with the as-of-right project as being okay and have changed all of the assumptions on this development cost side for the proposed project. And that's a problem. Something's not right. So I just don't understand how you could say, well, we'll leave the as-of-right as is with the assumption of the 5% loan and no overhead fee and no construction contingency. That's really okay. So you're saying that's a valid analysis, and now here for the proposed, you're saying, oh, wait a minute, this isn't valid, this isn't valid, this isn't valid, this isn't valid.
Honestly, I'm less saying that anything was not valid and more saying I was engaged in January of 16 and was asked to take a look at previous work, and I looked at it. We looked at it, and we found it to be reasonable. And in our report, we actually identified some areas where we thought there was some risk.
Right,
we
and
found
I
it to be
thought that
reasonable.
was on the income side. I
Sure.
believe you said the risk
Sure.
was on the income side.
Sure.
So you looked at it, and it
Sure.
looked like it was valid.
Right.
So
And-
then you need to carry those assumptions through to the proposed report. Otherwise, your credibility is in question. I can't sit here and say, okay, 5% loan is good for this project, which has community facility that everybody feels is not going to work, including the board, yet we should have an even higher interest rate for the proposed. You can't look at the report in a vacuum. You can't look at the proposed in a vacuum. It has to be linked to the as-of-right, and it's not in this case, and that's a problem. That's a very serious problem that I am not willing to accept this second report as valid, precisely because it has been created on an island by itself with no reference whatsoever to the rest of the report. And the fact that we had settled on those costs. Did you listen to the YouTubes for the past 5 or 6 hearings?
Yeah. Yes, Madam
So then you
Commissioner.
saw there was a lot of examination about the costs and a lot of requests to lower the costs, to lower the costs. So I really just don't understand it. I'm sorry.
Well, okay, I hear you, and as Mitch said, I hear you. All I can say is that I was brought in when I was brought in, and I was instructed to take a fresh look at the project as it is now, and to evaluate the project that's a proposal in front of the commission, and to leave the as-of-right scenario as
Right,
it was.
but you're a feasibility person. Now, let's say somebody else took that original report and matched the exact font and typeface of your report, put it all together, made all the pages go from 1 to 140 and said, you read it. Wouldn't you look at it and go, wait a minute, why do you have a 5% interest rate for the as-of-right and 7% for the proposed? This doesn't make any sense. Somebody's wrong here.
Respectfully, I'm not sure that that's the case, because they are entirely different projects with different products, and
The only problem with that statement is the fact that we all agreed that the as-of-right is risky if it could be done at all.
Right.
So then why would a bank give you a lower interest rate on that? Good point, right?
Sure.
High risk, high interest rate.
well, I think actually both scenarios are. What I would like to point out is that both projects are very risky, and
I'm sorry.
okay,
Those are my thoughts on
okay,
this.
thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, though, for your time. I appreciate it.
Well,
And to echo Commissioner Otley Brown's observations, I do thank you for your efforts, but I too was sort of scratching my head just a tad concerning the as-of-right versus the new proposal. And I was sitting there thinking, it doesn't appear that the analysis was carrying over, the same sort of methodology was carried over from your as-of-right into your proposal. And I was, catching things that were, I think Commissioner Otley Brown brought that up yesterday, about, in some ways utilizing the real number because that's what, you spent, and in some ways negating what you spent because maybe it didn't satisfy, what you needed to show. And I found it very difficult to sort of parse out sort of a track that I could look and go, yeah, he's done exactly the same thing, he's carried through the same assumptions. I'm not sure that you would be able to come up with with where you want to be shall we say, if you did that, if you followed that course. So I am having trouble trying to reconcile that. Any other commissioners have anything else to say for Mr. Mariella?
I think the explanation that you have provided has helped me clarify where the numbers are coming from.
Can't hear you. Put your microphone.
The explanation that you provided has helped.
Talk louder.
I'll have to sing.
Yes.
The explanation that you have provided has helped me at least better understand where the numbers are coming from, and I think the complexity of this specialty project and trying to market that, I have heard that, and I think it would be helpful if that can be further clarified with examples of landmark buildings or other conversion of church or other facilities that where they sit on the market for a long time, and I think those would be very helpful as a guide for us. And I think this is a good project. This is a good product, and any further there's a balance that has been struck in terms of the number of number of dwelling units and the increase in the community facility. I think this would serve as a good project in this neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Corby?
Thank you, Vice Chair and Commissioners. Mitch Corby, once again. Obviously, questions remain, and I think we can respond to them. I like the opportunity to do so. I realize this application's been in front of you for some time now, but I'd like you to understand that we have taken a fresh look. The questions that you're raising, although linger back, are new and do relate to the new materials that we have as we've tried to react to the prior materials. I'd like an opportunity to react to the as-of-right issues in writing to you. I understand that there's some, as has been said, application fatigue, and I appreciate that we've had a number of hearings. Nonetheless, this is a very important project. It's important to us, it's important to the city, it's important to this neighborhood. We can't let this building deteriorate any further. The building is going to deteriorate if we continue to sort of have questions about how we can move forward. This, as Commissioner Chandra said, is the right project. We've achieved the right kind of balance. I know we have these questions to answer. I think we can answer them. As you said, Commissioner, there is no reasonable as-of-right alternative that we can come up with, and we've given this a lot of thought. I recognize the numbers have to, as you put it, match appropriately. I'd like an opportunity to have our financial analysts continue to work on this.
I don't see a need to do that, frankly, because I think that there has been enough time spent on trying to get these numbers right, and every time you come in with different numbers...
Quiet, please.
Excuse me. Every time you come in with different numbers, the credibility question comes back into the fore. Because the bottom line is, what makes this set of numbers any truer than the next set of numbers or the previous set of numbers? And then it becomes a point where you can't even understand which one of the assumptions is the right assumption. One thing your new financial expert said, a lot of this hinges on assumptions, and he's absolutely correct.
Yeah, I think that's true with every variance.
His assumptions versus my assumptions. And the bottom line is, he can now give me another set of assumptions, and it's still going up against my assumptions, as well as the commissioner's assumptions.
I appreciate that. I think that's what this is about, in fact, is a discussion of
Right,
the
and I am
assumptions.
not convinced and have not been convinced
I appreciate
by your team's assumptions.
Okay. I appreciate that, Commissioner. I'd like an opportunity to convince you and like to be able to do it in writing so you can see it. And I think that we deserve the opportunity to do that one last time. And I'd like the opportunity to do that.
We understand that, and we'll take it under advisement.
All right, I appreciate that.
I think we'll
Thank you
move
so much.
along.
Thank you. I have nothing else.
You have no one else?
No.
Then I invite the represented opposition to come and speak.
Good morning, Michael Hiller from Hiller PC, on behalf of Central Park Neighbors Association, Central Park West Neighbors Association. Just as a preliminary matter, I noticed that a document was handed up and appeared on the whiteboard behind me. That document's not been provided to the opposition. I have no idea what's in it, and I'm unable to comment on it as a consequence. It could have been provided to me last night or sometime I mean, I see it's being handed to me now, but it does me really no use since I can't read it while talking to you. There was also a series of comments made concerning other projects, concerning pre-construction, marketing, and whether or not it's possible to sell the units, and a couple of developments were referenced. Obviously, we haven't gotten notice of those either, but my experience is the same as the board's, which is I get those flyers all the time concerning developments that are not yet built, but which are marketed to me as someone who, as a prospective purchaser who gets the opportunity to get in quickly on this great new project. I wish that I had gotten notice of that argument as well. But leaving aside my objections, by now you know my life story and my clients' life stories. I've submitted, I think, 4 submissions to this board. You've heard me speak to you at length, and it's not my intention to lecture you or to argue in front of you today. I tried to think of something I could say that would be constructive and appropriately contextual. What could I say today that I haven't said before, and what could really add to your consideration of this application? And the answer that came to me, ironically, came from the developer's submission recently. On pages 9 and 10 of the submission, Mr. Corby argued with respect to a series of decisions by the board concerning prior applications, and he argued that those applications require that the application here be granted. Now, I disagree with his interpretation of those decisions. But the larger point is actually not the decisions themselves, but the between-the-lines argument that Mr. Corby was making, which was that whatever the board decided previously constitutes a precedent for the next decisions. What he was arguing, again, between the lines, was since you granted the applications in the prior instances, you have to grant this one because it's based upon the same circumstances. Now, again, we've argued they're completely different, but here's the point. The decision on this application will set the standard. It will be the precedent. It will be what's acceptable, because the next application that's based upon the same facts and circumstances has to be granted if this one were to be granted. And that's a concern for us. And I'm speaking not just on behalf of a few people, not just on behalf of a developer, but representing literally thousands of people on the Upper West Side, preservationists, environmental groups, communities, and neighbors, who are deeply distressed about this project and what the implications would be, not only for their neighborhood, but for the next project. Consider for a moment what it would mean if this application were to be granted. I understand that the board has commented, or members of the board have commented, that the B finding is kind of seems like it's been met. I want to emphasize to the board that the principal basis for the B finding, in fact, the only basis for the B finding, is that the developer cannot generate a reasonable return on investment. There are 2 prospective purchasers who have expressed interest in this building, one of whom is here today. The developer chased away the first one, and with respect to the second one, they've not spoken to him. There's no asking price out there. There's been no marketing. The project has not been listed with a real estate broker. If the developer were successful in obtaining this body's approval with respect to the B finding, what it would mean is that a developer, even afforded the opportunity to sell or rent to a prospective purchaser or tenant, could turn them away. They don't have to list the property with a broker. They don't have to market it. There doesn't have to be evidence of newspaper listings, online listings. It's not necessary if that's what the developer has done here, and I believe the record shows that that's the case. As far as I'm aware, the principal basis for the argument that the B finding is met is that there's a letter from Baltimore Scott, the prior tenant, or the prior owner who says it can't be used, and a newspaper article. I would respectfully submit that that doesn't constitute substantial evidence. I don't think it constitutes evidence at all. It's an opinion. What really can determine whether or not you can generate a reasonable return on investment is what the market will bear. And they are not testing the market. They don't want to test the market. The developer is also arguing that, I just heard it today, 4.6%. 4.6% per year, which is a pre-tax profit. I have to tell you, I think that Commissioner Otley-Brown was hitting this point about the increased costs and how it seems to be that they're backing into the numbers. I don't believe there's any real estate developer, I don't believe there's any investor that would put the kind of money the developer is talking about here just to get 4.6% pre-tax return. because he could put that money into a AAA municipal bond fund and get 3.5% post-tax. So why would someone put that kind of money just to get 4.6 per year? And the answer, of course, is that he wouldn't. The reason the 4.6% number exists is to back into a number that seems like it's the minimal. But I think everyone in this room knows that 4.6, the developer is not here with Herrick Feinstein, with the lobbyists they've hired, with Corcoran, just to get 4.6% pre-tax return per year. It's just not believable. When Commissioner Ali Brown, I don't mean to keep talking to you directly, but when you mentioned that there's a credibility gap here, you didn't use those terms, but that's the gist of it, it's enormous. It's simply, you just cannot, the financial assumptions, the financial computations, the numbers that are used, they simply are not believable. And that's not the only instance in which the developer has come forward with conflicting or changing or shifting information. At one point, the developer argued, with respect to the A finding, that the problem was that the ceiling heights were too low at 8 feet 8 inches, and that the floor plate on the fourth floor was too narrow. At which point we came forward showing that the ceiling heights at 8 foot 8 inches were actually above standard, and that the floor plate on the fourth floor was common to the district, at which point the developer made an application to withdraw the application. Now they come back and say, well, it's actually the fact that it's a landmark building. That's why the A finding is met. My point is, the ground keeps shifting. It's a credibility problem that infects the entire application. And so I would respectfully submit that when considering what the consequences of a grant would be, consider that a developer can come forward and give you shifting and conflicting information and somehow get a variance nonetheless. With respect to the A finding, the developer has argued that the building is functionally obsolete. I know that the commissioners have expressed that it might very well be functionally obsolete. And it's not my intention to be here in front of you and argue with you, but I must tell you, I find it difficult to understand how a building is functionally obsolete when there are two people who want to come forward and use the building within the existing zoning resolution and without a variance. If the building can be used as a religious facility, as Pastor Terry Starks would like to use it for his church, Fresh Start, New Beginning, I don't understand how it could be functionally obsolete. He wants to use it. At a recent event that I attended with hundreds of supporters of our position, two people came forward to me and asked me if the building were still available because they need it for religious purposes. I said, I don't know whether, it certainly should be available. People want to use it. But it seems to me that if people are coming forward saying they want to use the building in accordance with existing zoning and without a variance, it cannot be functionally obsolete. And I'm deeply concerned, as I know Landmark West has expressed as well, there is a significant concern that the argument is being made to this body that simply because the building is subject to Landmark Preservation Commission jurisdiction, that in and of itself constitutes a hardship, that it renders the building functionally obsolete. There are over 1,100 landmark buildings in the city of New York. If the Board of Standards and Appeals rules for the first time that mere landmark status constitutes a hardship that renders a building functionally obsolete, every landmark in the city of New York will come under fire. And there is a developer right now, L-Odd Real Estate Developers, you can look them up on the internet. They are actually marketing to the city of New York, to prospective purchasers, that they obtain landmark buildings for conversion to exclusive, ultra-exclusive luxury residential condominiums. It concerns me, and it concerns the members of the preservationist community, that if this conversion were to be approved, what's next? When I said earlier on that this is an important application, it is literally the most important variance application that this board has seen in decades. In decades. It is so important because what you decide here will literally affect the landscape of the city of New York. With respect to the C finding, I must confess I was taken aback at comments that were made at the executive session. The comment was made that we had focused on the C finding, and in particular on use. And the comment that was made was, the building is in a district that permits residential use as of right. and Landmarks Preservation Commission has signed off on the project, so use really isn't at issue, so we shouldn't have focused on use, and the comment was we should focus on the other areas. I must emphasize to you, we've submitted a 26-page submission to this board. We put 1 page of that 26 pages on the issue of the C finding. We spent 11 pages on the B finding and 6 pages on the A finding. The C finding, although very important, is not the only focus. It really isn't the focus. But I must emphasize to you, Vice Chair Hinkson, that when we talk about the C finding and we talk about the concern about the landmark church being in close proximity to the building next door at 370, we're not saying that we don't like the idea of a church being converted to residential use. I can tell you, I find that repugnant, but that's not the legal basis for the argument that we're making here today. And I wouldn't waste your time in making it. My point simply was that there are setback rules with which this board is very familiar that require the windows in the church, if used for residential purposes, to be set back from the property line. And our argument is, if you were to waive that setback requirement, that you would create the tenement-like conditions that this board specifically commented would be inappropriate in the Watchtower Track and Bible decision, the 1998 decision in which the board rejected a variance application. We're talking about having residential buildings within 10 feet of each other, and if you take into consideration the fire escape, you can literally take a step from 370 and jump into the building next door. Now, I'm not suggesting people are going to start doing that, but here's what I am suggesting, okay? The tenement-like conditions that the zoning resolution is designed to prevent would be undermined severely by allowing the church to be converted and, more importantly, for the setback rules to be varied. And that is our argument with respect to the C finding. We have shown you photographs reflecting the close proximity of the buildings, and we respectfully submit that this would have an adverse impact and impair the use and development of the adjacent property at 370 Central Park West. And that is our argument with respect to the C finding. With respect to the D finding, the developer does not even try to rent or sell a building. I don't see how it could be anything but a self-imposed hardship. They never tried. You know, it's interesting. As an opposition attorney, I don't get to know what board members are thinking. You guys have great poker faces. I literally don't have any idea how you're responding to my arguments, except sometimes I get a sense that I may be barking up the wrong tree. And it's not my intention to waste your time. But I will tell you, I'm very familiar with the D finding and the case laws applying it, and I just must tell you that the cases that I see, when a developer doesn't try to rent or sell a property, it's a self-imposed hardship. And lastly, with respect to the E finding, I'm not going to reiterate the concerns that the board has raised here. I will simply say the following. The numbers don't add up. I also find it fascinating that today we heard that the appliances are now going to be $35,000 per unit. That's pretty expensive for a bunch of appliances in a kitchen. But be that as it may, I don't believe that it's appropriate for the developer to be able to come to this board with a set of numbers and to literally change them without support, without backup, and without any real explanation of it. And I think the real problem is that in the final analysis, what we have is an application where the developer is not looking for the minimum variance. The developer is looking for a massive $100 million profit here, and that's why they're fighting so hard. And what we're really talking about from the opposition's perspective is we have a group of people who want to use the church as a church. We have a museum facility that desperately needs the space and has inquired and made efforts to try to acquire it. There are other potential uses for the space, and the real bottom line is, what precedent does this board want to set with respect to this issue? What is going to be the standard going forward? Insofar as Mr. Corby's request for more time, for more opportunity, I know I've been in at least 2 hearings when I've been told that that was the last opportunity. This was it. They had, I think, months from the prior hearing to come up with something that would persuade this board and to answer the very specific questions that were asked time and again. There were at least 4 hearings where I heard the questions being raised concerning the financial calculations and the assumptions being made, and I'm stunned that we're here today with a request from the developer to say we just want one more chance. The just one more chance, that's happened 3 times, and I just think it's time that we get closure here. Mr. Corby talked about application fatigue. That is the understatement of the day. It has been going on forever, and it's simply not fair to the community that they have to endure the uncertainty with respect to this property and to submit to additional hearings when the developers had so many opportunities to come forward with the answers that this board has properly requested. So in conclusion, I would respectfully urge the board to render a decision today. I would respectfully urge the board to take serious consideration about what the potential consequences of a grant would be here. It is scary beyond belief to the people in this neighborhood and to people in the city of New York who are so concerned about their landmarks and so concerned about the integrity of maintaining the zoning resolution in its current form. We urge this board to vote today and to reject the application. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Hiller, I've just got a couple of statements I'd like to make. It's not and hasn't been a standard at this board that a developer should sell his property or show that he can sell his property. That's not something that we consider. Secondly, landmark status, I think it's clear, landmark status at this board has not been considered a hardship. You've got to have something else. It may be associated with being a landmark, like a physical characteristic of some kind, but not in itself as a landmark. And indeed, I think that our comments concerning the use were appropriate because we've been getting a lot of comments concerning the conversion and not allowing a particular use, such as residential, to happen in this building. That is not before us. What's before us are some pretty technical issues. And yes, they happen to deal with residential use, but they're technical. It's not up to us to sit here and say, you cannot convert to residential. So I just want to make that clear that that's not within our purview, and we wanted to make sure that everyone understood that.
I appreciate that, and if I may just speak to those issues very briefly, we recognize that it's not the board's jurisdiction to decide whether or not a building within the zoning district can be converted to residential use as of right. And I just wanted to emphasize to you that our point simply was our focus was on the setback waivers, which have been requested, and the extent to which the grant of a setback waiver would result in the creation of tenement-like conditions in the community. That's our focus with respect to the C finding. I am gratified to hear that the board does not regard mere landmark status by itself sufficient to constitute evidence necessary to meet the A finding. So I won't comment further about that. But I do want to mention the one issue concerning selling the property. 2 points I'd like to make on that. Number one, Pastor Terry Starks has expressed interest in renting the property as well, and also the Children's Museum may very well have been able to rent the property, but the developer has not expressed any interest in renting it to the Children's Museum. Again, I think it's imperative that the developer makes some effort, even if sale is off the table, and I'll cover that in just one moment. Even if selling the property were off the table, there still should be some evidence of an effort by the developer to rent it. And I don't believe there's any evidence in the record that proves that or even begins to show it. And with respect to sale, I respect what you're saying about what the board's policy is. I can only respond by referencing what looks like about 6 cases in our brief, including a Court of Appeals case entitled Forrest versus Evershed, in which it said, in the first place, it was not shown that any diligent or bona fide effort was made to sell the property. We are left to guess the means, if any, that were employed to effect the sale thereof. Interveners do not tell us whether the property was advertised, and if so, how. that it was listed with other brokers, or even that a sign was placed on the property to indicate that it was for sale. He also cited Ryan versus Miller, GM Partners, Rye versus Board of Architectural Review, Marchese versus Koch, Shiner versus Board of Estimate, in which the court ruled that the grant of a variance was reversed because proof failed to demonstrate that any diligent and bona fide effort was made to sell the property. Hofwatt versus Clanstone, City Services Oil versus Saka, Wakerman versus Penfield, Kennedy versus Zoning Board of Appeals, and Reeder versus Smeagol. All of those cases, the courts ruled that in order to meet the requirement that a reasonable return cannot be made on the investment, that some effort has to be shown, number one, to make an effort to sell or rent the property, and number two, that those efforts were sustained and bona fide. And I would respectfully submit that while respecting what you say concerning what the board's prior practice may have been, that the case law, I think, paints a different picture.
Well, without resurrecting my subscription to LexisNexis, I think that we can handle that in our resolution. So
I appreciate that, and
All
again,
those cases, are they use variances?
some of them are use and some of them are
Well,
bulk.
that's a different story if it's a use variance.
Well, let's put it this way, they're not all use variances. Some of them are use and some of them are bulk. I don't know that it would make a difference, but the bottom line is there are plenty of bulk variances which have the same findings.
we appreciate it and just want to sort of stay on track here, so.
Thank you very much for your time
Thank
and
you.
for your feedback.
Thank you. Do we have any elected officials, representatives from elected officials who need to speak? If not, oh, we do? Okay, there we go. Didn't see you behind the panel.
Morning. My name is Jefferson Mao, and I'll be giving the testimony of Manhattan Borough President Gail A. Brewer. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today in regard to BSA 6515BZ and BSA 6615A, the request to convert the former First Church of Christ Scientist at 361 Central Park West to residential condominium use. I remain strongly opposed to this proposal, as the applicant's resubmission does not represent substantive new information in any way, and the proposed use does not respect the significance of the building to the character of this neighborhood. The building before you is a NYC individual landmark, not a vacant irregular lot with split zoning districts, poor soil conditions, or any of the other hosts of typical reasons one reads when reviewing BSA applications. This structure is considered to be in the finest tradition of Beaux-Arts classicism, and is one of a handful of churches designed by Carrere and Hastings. It was meant as a place of public assembly, and its design was and is meant to be enjoyed by many, not a few. The waivers requested will facilitate a residential condo project, and I do not believe these waivers are the minimum necessary to achieve a financially viable project. However, I do believe community facility uses would be more appropriate to the building's stature, and if that use required waivers, would actually meet the findings of the minimum necessary. A dedicated grassroots effort continues to highlight ways in which the beloved building can still serve as a community resource, and consideration should be paid to that view. More importantly, I do not believe that the landmark status of a building constitutes a hardship. The special character of this building only enhances its value for boutique niche residential use, so I find the citation of hardship because of landmark status disingenuous. In closing, I still do not see how the applicant has met the burden of proof for any of the findings required under Section 7221 of the New York City zoning resolution, or how this submission represents any significant new information or substance. I truly appreciate your careful review of this application. Thank you for your time to this matter.
Thank you. Any other elected official representatives? That's it? Okay. We'll hear from members of the public. You will be given 3 minutes, and the buzzer goes off. Ms. Matias at the end, who is a tiger when it comes to this, will give you the high sign. And I ask that you respect the 3 minutes so that everyone gets an opportunity, and we're glad to have you here so that we can hear your concerns. All right, so if you'll line up, I guess, along the side of the room there, we'll take you one at a time. You're
Good
up.
morning, Madam Chair, members of the commission. My name is Andrew Maloney. I'm a real estate attorney here in New York City, and I've been practicing law for well over 25 years now. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to present before you and to really just give you a again, perhaps a recapitulation of my last testimony, and just a reminder of some of the things that we haven't been talking about here, to my knowledge, to date. And that is the human capital. The human capital in New York City. How do you, if you will, fix the brokenhearted? How do you fix the people who have no place else to go when they're faced with challenges? Historically, it's always been the churches. They're the ones that do the difficult job of taking in the brokenhearted, the broken homes, the incarcerated, when they have nowhere to go, when they have no resources, if you will, to seek counseling, when the federal or state government or city agencies fail them in terms of counseling them and providing them with hope. I'm a little nervous about my 3 minutes.
Don't be nervous, you're going to be fine. There you go.
So what I wanted to, again, say to the board, you have before you seats that are filled and packed with believers. Believers in this pastor that's about to come behind me. And I think that their presence speaks volumes, because they too are, like myself, one of the brokenhearted who are impacted by life's journey. And again, this is such a viable resource in the community that without it, you take it away, there's so many people's lives that have been changed already for the worse because they didn't have this resource to go to. So that being said, you've heard the law, but again, no one's talking about the human capital. This building is a landmark for a reason. It's known as a place of worship. It's known as a place that people go to be healed or simply meditate. Take that away, give it to the developers to let them do what they do. Again, there's so many people who have already been shut out and will be continued to shut out that will not be able to get the type of not just recourse, but the healing that they need in order to help us make this place, make the city a better place. In closing, what I'd like to do is introduce the man behind me, and that is Mr. Terry Starks. Pastor Starks is not only a dynamic preacher, pastor, but he's a friend to many, a friend to all of the people that you see here who've come out in his support and the support of the reinstitution of this church. This church, again, had such a dynamic impact on the community. And again, it'll speak for itself. But I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and we ask in closing that you simply grant us the opportunity not only by this church, but to continue to have a positive impact on this area as well as New York City in general. Thank you so much, and again, may God be with you in your deliberations. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Pastor.
Pastor Terry Starks, First New Beginning Christian Church. Once again, it's a privilege, Vice Chair, all the other commissioners, to speak before you. Like I said before, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago in January, the church made a bad decision. I was the pastor for that church for almost 3 years and 3 months. 3 years and 3 months. They could have made one telephone call and brought me back to New York City, and we wouldn't be standing before you today. The church made a bad decision. The developer made a bad decision. See, it was all about money. What I'm saying is the church been sitting there right now for 2 years. You guys know, Vice Chair, you know, you've been in real estate. They say they're going to take another 2 to 3 years for somebody to move in. That's 5 years. If you give me 2 to 3 years, you wouldn't have room enough to put people. Why? We're looking at numbers. We ain't looking at numbers. We're looking at lives. We're looking at a bad decision that was made, and they want you guys to sign off on it. That's what they want you to do. We're talking about 34 people. You put 2 in there, you're talking about 64. You put another 3 people in those apartments, you're looking at 132. We're talking about thousands of people whose lives are going to be changed. This is a game changer. This is a game changer, and what they want for you to do is sign off on it. It's a bad decision. The church knew it was a landmark. The developer knew it was a landmark. What? And the people, we raised that money. The people raised that money. They raised $300,000, put the down payment on it, and bought the church for $14 million. All because of leadership in California made a bad decision. The people suffer for that bad decision. Now we're here to right a wrong. I'm asking you to give me an opportunity to restore that church, that community, that church back to its community. This would be one of the greatest decisions you ever made. I promise you. It's easy. If they would have gave me the decision 2 years ago, we wouldn't be here. I promise you. When I look at it, bad decision, numbers, I look at landmark, they saying the function obsolete. Everything in New York City, over 80% of things are over 100 years old. You can do that on every building in New York City. Let me tell you what makes it functional obsolete. They made a bad decision and they needed the money to get out of it because they had to pay over $100,000 in mortgage. That what made it functional obsolete. That church ain't functional obsolete. What that church need is for the doors to be open and let New York City get a fresh start, a new beginning. That's exactly what that church need. Ain't nothing wrong with that church. Now we just need to get back the doors to be open again and let the community come back in. I guarantee you within less than a year to 2 years, that church will be full to capacity again and we will never look back again. Thank you.
No, I said next speaker.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
Good morning, afternoon. Kate Wood, I'm the president of Landmark West, and I just want to home in on a few points. So substantive, credible, and truly represent new information. This was the standard that you, the board, set for the applicant in March when you voted to reopen the public hearing and allow the applicant to make a fresh submission. The application, now revised for a 5th time, is none of the above. This is old information repackaged. It was not credible before, and it is even less credible now. The applicant still fails to meet the burden of proof for any of the 5 findings. After all of these months, all of these do-overs, we realize more than ever that this is a blatant attempt to take a speculative luxury development project and back into a hardship argument. But like Cinderella's stepsisters, the shoe simply doesn't fit. This application, which you so aptly described on March 8th as complicated and difficult, made even more complicated and difficult by the error-filled application presented to the board, suggests that the applicant's February 29th request to withdraw its application was indeed an attempt, again, in your words, to wipe the record clean and resubmit the same application at a later date, an action that you clearly stated would not be condoned by the board, and yet the applicant has done just that. You have received numerous letters opposing approval of this application, which would destroy significant features of an important individual landmark and pack into it the equivalent of a residential high-rise. Elected officials, civic organizations with deep experience in zoning and BSA matters, architects and historians who understand the value of what's at stake, and perhaps most importantly, citizens and former congregants to whom this building is far more than bricks and mortar. All have raised concerns about the impacts of this project and its lack of merit. In addition, nearly 1,000 New Yorkers have signed a petition against approval. We submit the petition and the signatures for the record. At this moment in our city's history, for good reason, people are particularly sensitive to developers and their lobbyists' expectations of entitlement to favorable land decisions. The fact that this applicant has so audaciously pursued what is clearly an indefensible hardship argument only underscores the problem. It is a plague on our neighborhoods and our civic process, and together we must reset the balance. As you have observed, aspects of this application raise many more questions than they answer. Landmark West, like the Municipal Art Society, for example, takes special issue with the applicant's argument that the site's landmark status can be considered physical or unique condition in the meaning of 7221. Thank you for underscoring that. And I just want to say across the city every day, landmarks are used for their original purposes, including the vast majority of landmark houses of worship, or they're adapted for other uses without zoning variances.
You're exceeding your 3 minutes, Ms. Woods.
Again,
Please
just
wrap
I want to underscore, this is a speculative luxury development, Sub-Zero, Wolf, et cetera, backed into a hardship project, hardship argument. And in summary, I would just like to list the key people and organizations who are recommending a no vote.
You can give this to us in writing.
I know, but I'm saving you time because these people are not here to speak for themselves.
Please submit writing.
Faster.
Thank you.
I have a list
Thank you.
of 15 organizations, elected officials, and of course, you've been hearing
I
from
think
many,
we
many
have that
concerned
list.
citizens
Thank
and the
you.
congregants who, because
Ms. Wood.
of this issue, are
Please submit it-
homeless
please
and they
submit the
want to
writing.
come home.
Submit it in
So
writing.
the public opinion is clear.
Submit it in writing, please.
It's time for a vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Sorry.
Good morning still. My name is Adrian Smith, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm a resident of the Upper West Side and a landscape architect. You may ask why a landscape architect may be concerned about the fate of a work of architecture. Well, the answer is threefold. As a designer, I appreciate good architecture and design. 2, I care about my community. And 3, I'm the former board chair of First Church of Christ Scientist, the original owner of this building. I was part of the group who did our best to care for the building at West 96th Street and Central Park West for 100 years, until 2003. What I'd like to impress upon the board today is not only the architectural importance of this building, but its cultural and spiritual importance. Christian Science is a uniquely American religion. Mary Baker Eddy, who discovered and founded the religion, defined it as the law of God, the law of good. In Christian Science, God is understood to be infinite love, and so invariably good, that a clear glimpse of this through prayer has power to heal, redeem, and restore anyone. And that is what impelled us for 100 years. And that is why this religious structure is significant to our collective history as a society and community. We loved the building and worked to maintain it as best as we could over the years. We helped the building become a landmark because we knew how important it was to preserve the legacy of not only the great architects Curran Hastings, but the legacy of Mary Baker Eddy, a very important woman in American history. It was no easy feat to build this church. We have records that show hundreds, if not thousands, of donations from individuals around the city for amounts as small as a few pennies. We thought the landmarks law would be the way to protect the building and in turn protect these uniquely American stories. We now come to today where we could possibly witness the destruction of this beautiful landmark. What a tragedy that would be. And I'm here to ask the board to reconsider the decisions that have brought us to this point. Our church congregation took great pains to realize the maximum possible value for the sale of this building, but we never considered for a moment destroying the building in order to realize more capital gain. We were advised that we could not convert our church to a residential building. And we worked with the landmarks law, with a legal team and real estate professionals of the highest caliber to find a suitable buyer, the Crenshaw Christian Center, who would continue to use the awe-inspiring auditorium and other grand spaces within its walls for worship. I'm not opposed to change. I'm opposed to change that is based on a double standard. Our group was held to a standard contained in the landmarks law. Why wasn't this last group held to the same standard? Why have they been allowed to work around the law with their special influence in order to achieve their goal of maximum financial gain? There are other suitable adaptive reuse scenarios for this building, and I'm here to support those proposals. I urge the board to reverse the approvals given to this ill-conceived plan to destroy the facades of this structure and create condominiums. There is a way to move forward. This is not the way. You can stop the destruction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please respect the 3-minute rule.
My name is Anthony Heilbutt. I'm a resident of 370 Central Park West. By both profession and avocation, I consider myself a cultural historian, and this informs my great reservations about these plans. What the builders propose is a visual disgrace, a bad acid dream out of the 1960s, the period responsible for the destruction of Penn Station. Writ small, the vulgarizing of Carrier Hastings' vision will also go down in architectural infamy. But this cultural historian observes a more alarming parallel to the Lower East Side of the early 20th century, when the proximity of closely packed lives led to massive epidemics and premature death. Even if these builders had a good record, and they do not, what they propose is filled with physical dangers for our neighbors. Consider that asbestos is a leading cause of mesothelioma. If you Google this fairly obscure illness, the first item advises you don't have to sue anyone, which translates into, here's how to do it. I know this is a fatal illness. A few months ago, I spoke at the funeral of a man who had lived in Park West Village on 97th Street and had died of the disease. He was in his 80s, but the dust, termites, and vermin, inevitably induced by what promises to be 2 or 3 years of hard building, will be a particular threat to children, and 370 is filled with kids under 12. Remember that the distance is unusually small, barely 10 feet. For those like me who work at home, who write, create, dream, devise, the noise and physical agitation will be of nightmare proportions. Someone may argue that's no less a subjective remark than my aesthetic disdain. Granted, the space is a little tight, but hey, it's a big city, no, and big cities need to get bigger. Not this way, I'd respond, not with a betrayal of both art and democracy. We don't need to have our lives threatened in order to rescue some of the speculators who have already damaged so much of our West Side story. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good morning. I'm Christabel Goff. I'm speaking for the Society for the Architecture of the City, which is an all-volunteer historic preservation advocacy group.
Thank you very much.
This item is of concern to us because we believe your decision, whether you rule that this really hard-to-believe financial construct justifies a variance, will affect much more than just 361 Central Park West. To accept this application would be lenient and would create a potential expectation of reduced scrutiny and willingness to accept exceedingly minor modifications like the relocation of an entrance as a pretext for approval. There are some 35,000 landmark structures in New York, and more than 1,000 are individual landmarks like the First Church of Christ Scientist. Making it easy to break the zoning regulations that also govern them could become an incentive for more ill-conceived and damaging projects to arrive at the Landmarks Commission. The Landmarks Commission lacks the jurisdiction to regulate the kind of harm to the community and neighboring properties that would result from this application that is before you today. They cannot do what you're being asked to do. They can't regulate the interior, and they are not going to consider walls which are not visible from the public way. That's that contested wall. On the other hand, giving special consideration to landmarks and landmark communities has been a broad public policy in New York for 50 years. We very much hope that you will extend it in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Susan Simon of the Central Park West Neighbors Association. Just to go back in my own mind today, I realized that I've been to a lot of hearings, and this one actually was because of an opportunity given by the commissioners to the developer to go back and reconfigure their application, which frankly hadn't been working over the period of 4 hearings. So the hearings were closed, they were reopened, and here we are today. And in the last March 8th meeting of the BSA, Vice Chair Hinkson said, "This is a complicated and difficult application, made even more complicated and difficult by the error-filled application presented to the board. If indeed the request for withdrawal was an attempt by the applicant to wipe the record clean and resubmit the same application at a later date, The board will not condone such an action. Ms. Hinkson went on to say, if, however, the applicant has indeed found additional information not previously considered by this board, information I note that under the board's rules would be grounds for a rehearing, the board would be disposed to consider that new information before voting on the instant matter. I stress that any new information must be substantive, credible, and truly represent new information. It is impossible to read the new submission and not be struck by Ms. Hinkson's own statement. There simply is no substantive new information here, but rather a rehashing of old arguments by another well-connected attorney reframing what has become old news. While the community has sat through 4 extensive hearings, we have heard nothing of any substance related to the proposed tenement-like conditions to be created for the adjacent property 10 to 15 feet away, where the developer intends to break through massive granite to create 4-story curtain wall windows, roof gardens, patios, air conditioner compressors. Zoning laws, not landmark preservation approvals, were created and exist precisely to prevent the kinds of excesses this kind of development presents. The Landmarks Preservation Commission, by its own admission at their hearings, does not decide zoning law. There was at least one LPC commissioner who expressed considerable doubt that the proposed design would pass muster with the BSA. There is no doubt that the projected plan, which is wholly unnecessary to make a reasonable
Could you wrap
profit,
up?
yes, would create a hardship for the residents of 370 Central Park West.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm David Murphy. I live next door to the church. I'd like to read a submission from Dr. Cephas Swamidas, who's not able to be here, and then, if I may, my own. From Dr. Swamidas. I am writing to voice my opposition to the conversion. As a physician, I routinely care for patients who have suffered pulmonary insults from avoidable environmental injury. As a resident of 370 Central Park West, I'm appalled at the plan to create massive windows. 370 is a family-friendly building teeming with children. The majority of the children and elderly residents who are struggling with chronic, debilitating illness live on the south side of 370, the side that will be most affected. Drilling through granite walls that are nearly 2 feet thick to create windows on the north facade will release small ambulant particulate matter that will subject those very children, including my own, as well as adults, to a lifetime of pulmonary issues. This construction will generate mineral dust fine enough to inhale, which will inflame the airways, resulting in asthma, asbestosis, mesothelioma, silicosis, or any number of diseases. The chemical sealants used over the years will be released into the surrounding air, adding to the anatomical and physiological insult. A simple review of the medical literature shows that these diseases are rampant in construction workers who are assigned to work on similar projects. There's no way for the inhabitants of 370 to protect themselves from this particulate matter, as all of the windows and air conditioner grates directly face the construction. This does not even account for the health hazards of noise and vibration. While the developers may suggest that they can eliminate these risks, as a medical professional, I can assure you that such efforts, even assuming the developers proceeded in good faith, would be unsuccessful. Masonry workers in the heavily regulated city construction industry have for years been subjected to airborne particulates, even with state-of-the-art equipment and materials. Past history more suggests that it is unlikely that these developers would use state-of-the-art equipment and materials. When they used non-union laborers without appropriate certification to remove asbestos, it was clear that they would stop at nothing. Work was done at all hours of the day and night, and open dumpsters overflowed with asbestos-filled garbage bags. A review of the developer's publicly available history at previous work sites documents complaint after complaint and report after report. This is not a good project. There are many more financially feasible uses for the church that will not require these radical alterations. Dr. Swamidas. Now, my report, David Murphy. As you know better than I, Section 7221 begins by stating that the Board of Standards and Appeals may grant a variance provided that the board shall make each and every one of the following findings. I ask you to keep looking at the C finding. The certificate of appropriateness granted to the developer by Landmarks sets out many conditions that the developer must meet. I call your attention to the absence from the C of A of any discussion of impact of proposed alterations on the use and development of adjacent property. Indeed, how could the Landmarks Commission consider such factors? Their mandate is historic preservation, not protection of neighbors' property through local zoning. The certificate does allow alterations to provide light and air to the inhabitants of the multiple dwelling. Its principal concern is how the renovations will look to those who see the building from the outside. The C of A's only gesture to the neighbors' interests is approval of planters to be set in front. There's no acknowledgement of the massive impact of proposed alterations to the north side with neighbors 12 feet away. I wish someone really would acknowledge those impacts. When Section 7221 requires that the variance will not substantially impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, it charges the Board of Standards and Appeals as the agency that must determine this finding. Protection of adjacent property does not fall under the LPC's purview. Neither is protection of the public welfare from health hazards of granite dust. But if one says that the C findings protections don't fall under the BSA's purview either, because LPC already approved alterations, then the C findings and other elements of our zoning code fall under the purview of no agency. That's not the outcome that the legislators envisioned when they wrote the zoning code. The C finding and others have to remain with this body. We know that profitable uses exist that would require less invasive alteration. So we citizens rely on you to come through for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good morning. My name is Travis Brock Kennedy, and I'm here to highlight excerpts from a letter that the board has already received from the Historic Districts Council. This proposal is a cruel treatment of an individual landmark, particularly the removal of stained glass windows. One imagines that prospective tenants will be attracted to it because of its adaptive reuse, and retaining original elements would only add to its value and marketability as a unique residence. An example of a religious property's conversion to residential is the Abbey condominiums at 205 East 16th Street in Stuyvesant Square Historic District. Stained glass windows, including religious iconography, were artfully retained within the residence. Arbitrarily cutting window openings into a building, described in its designation as being the finest tradition of Beaux-Arts classicism, will be permanently damaging to the landmark and a removal of public art. With this in mind, please deny these myopic, unnecessary instructions and destruction of an architectural masterpiece. Thank you.
Good morning, or maybe it's afternoon. I don't have a clock.
It's afternoon, thank you.
Well, here we are
Please state your
again.
name for the second, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, I beg
Please
your
state your
pardon.
name for the record.
Sorry. My name is Katha Grace Rambush.
Thank you.
Well, here we are again. I am not a neighbor. I live on the Lower East Side, but I am a born and bred New Yorker. I earnestly ask you to put an end to this ongoing Kafkaesque performances of the developer with his ever-changing plans. Stand, as you should, for the Manhattan landmark edifice by a nationally known architect. Please, please, as the Board of Standards and Appeal, respect us, we, earnest citizens who save and cherish our architectural patrimony. By the way, don't risk your own records by allowing the desecration of the First Church of Christ Science. Now, I end with a rhetorical question because I wrote this before I came here. Don't you see how frivolous are these proposed plans? But I would say, having observed the meeting today, it would seem that some of you do indeed see how frivolous these things are. And I do want to thank you very much for the job you do. I have never really participated in something like this before in my 80 years, and I do thank you for the job that you do.
Thank you very much. My name is Barbara Zucker-Pinchoff, and I'm going to read a statement on behalf of Anthea Lingaman. She's here but has some issues with vision, so I'm going to read it for her. The 361 Central Park West developers' charade of hardship claims travesties New York City regulations designed to protect the public interest. If the BSA allows the variances deemed necessary by the developer, the surrounding neighbors will be endangered in the following ways. First and foremost, safety. I urge all the BSA commissioners to visit the church site and look particularly at the north side, only 10 feet or so from the building at 370 Central Park West. Imagine living there through the construction. Fire is always a concern on building sites. 370 Central Park West's fire escapes would be blocked by scaffolding and heavy machinery needed to pierce windows through Concord granite. The noise and dust would make that side of the building uninhabitable for the duration of the work and would render the once valuable apartments unsaleable. Obviously, this work would affect surrounding buildings as well, albeit to a lesser degree. And in the end, the work would not create desirable living spaces. Most of the 34 apartments he envisions building would be basically dark, needing artificial light at all times. How much would anyone want to pay for an apartment where you can watch every movement of your neighbor in the building next door, and vice versa? On the other hand, if the BSA prevented this from happening, this great landmark church would remain whole, preserved, and adapted for more fitting uses. There have been offers from museums for the space, and there could be rentable community space for the ousted church from museums for the space. Space for the ousted church congregation and other groups, an auditorium, offices, or apartments on the top 2 existing floors, even a school. This kind of reuse would not call for any zoning law variances and would cost much less than inserting 6 more floors into the church's huge interior space. Also, the developer's ability to finance the project drew considerable skepticism before he withdrew his application. Now he has a new lawyer and a $47,000 lobbyist. Not exactly trust-inspiring, in fact, more than a little eyebrow-raising. For these reasons, I ask you to vote no to granting these variances.
Thank you.
I'll also make a very brief statement on my own behalf. Barbara Zucker-Pinchoff. I actually am one of the lucky people who lives 10 feet from the proposed windows. And I just wonder, I've been counseled by a friend, I'm a physician, and I have a friend who is an environmental physician by profession, and she has counseled me to move out because there will be so much granite and silica dust produced by the cutting of those windows. I just find that incredible that that may be necessary, and it's not just any construction project. It's not a not in my backyard, don't put up something up in front of me. Not all construction projects are 10 feet from existing windows, and not all construction projects require cutting through existing stone, asbestos, various forms of construction materials 100 years old that may produce severe illnesses in those living nearby. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Grace, grace, fresh start, new beginning to all that's here. We're all gathered here because of God's purposeful, divine order and decency. I'm here as a messenger on behalf of the church and Pastor Terry Starks. The truth is that we are all human and we're all spirit. I can only speak through my spirit. I was looking for a church, Dr. Price's church, and the first message that I got, I found Pastor Terry Starks, a man of God. After a time, I was assigned to his family. And he is a teacher, he's a pastor, he's an illustrator. He makes the word plain and clear so all can understand. There are some truths that I know. I know that God is. I know that he cannot lie. I know that Jesus lives inside me. I know that life and death are in the power of the tongue. I know that it is impossible to please God without faith, and he always puts his stamp on his work. I know that God will open doors that no man can shut, and he'll shut doors that no man can open. His word never returns void. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, and those who pray and believe will have what they say. I'm here to say that there are miracles in the church. One of Pastor Terry's messages and my great faith helped me to go to Beijing, China, to see my son play judo for the United States of America on his second birth. I started telling people that I was going to see my son play judo. And I believed it a year before he was going to Japan, to Beijing. I had people who believed with me with prayer. God is no respecter of persons. He will do for you what he did for me. And he sent me to China on the wing of a prayer to see my son play judo. And this story is not about me or my son. This is about how God will create miracles if you only believe. I had no passport, but I got a passport on the day that they said, nobody gets a passport unless someone in your family died and you have that death certificate. And the man who issued my passport to me used to play judo when he was young. I got a visa when I did not even have a hotel yet. And I wind up being in the vicinity of the games when I got there. People all over New York City paid for me to go.
3 minutes. Ben, your 3 minutes is up. Sorry. If you can wrap it up.
I didn't pay one penny to go. I was blessed going, and I was blessed coming. For the first time, Japan lost against my son. This is not about us, but about the faithfulness of God, because he holds the heart of the king. And the truth is owned by God.
Ma'am, please
and I
conclude your
pray
testimony.
that you will make a decision of the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm not going to preach to you. I'm going to get straight to the point. I understand right now that God is not a popular subject to some people in here. So I'm going to just get straight to the point. What is popular is money. I am a member of Fresh Start New Beginning Church, New York City, even though he's in Atlanta. I was a member of the church, Christian Center East, whatever. Dr. Price was the pastor there. I've been in that church from when Pastor Terry was there, after Pastor Terry got let go and other pastors until the door closed. The point that I just need to make is that they did a vote count. Some members got letters to vote to close this church down and some didn't. I was a member that got a letter. The letter doesn't state anything about us voting for the building to be sold, to be turned into condominiums. Basically, the letter states it's 2 pages. I only have 3 minutes, so I can't do it, but I can make each one of you a copy and send it another day. But basically, the letter is talking about how much the church is in debt. They got to pay this one, they got to pay that one. So they feel that it's in the best interest that they sell the church so they can pay off their debt and close the building. My point that I'm trying to make is that that's not fair. We shouldn't have to be pushed out of our church because the word says that we supposed to believe. How can you preach something and tell us, and I'm young, or my youth, how you going to tell us that, oh, we supposed to believe in your God and you can't even believe to keep a church? The people that built that church believed it's for it to stand there, and we're here to take it. My pastor right there, before that man let him go and find him, he asked that man to give that church to him, and he told him no, but you won't give it to the world? Well, according to my God, when we take something from the world, we keep it, we don't give it back to the world. And I'm not here to try to persuade and try to tell any of y'all nothing, but I'll tell you this. Look at me. I'm a mother of 4 children. My oldest is 25. My son is 23. My daughter just left out of here. She's 18. She's going to model for the UN. Dignitaries, this is second one. I have a small 3-year-old. If it wasn't for my pastor and my first lady to support me, who knows where I'd be? I have a bachelor's in paralegal studies. I have a license as a private investigator. I have so many things because of my pastor. Yes, the church, the building doesn't make the church, but we make the church. And I read, I'm gonna close out with this. I read something, I'm not sure, but it was saying how the building is 110 years old, was dead, there's nobody in it. You're right, right now that building is sitting dead there because we're not in there. So I'm just asking, that you think about this. Your kids, your grandkids, whoever may come there, may need to come there. We might be a deliverance for them. So just think about that when you make your decision today, the motive in this whole situation, the motive of it. So I just leave y'all with that. Thank you, have a good day.
Next speaker. Are there any other speakers? No more speakers? Yes?
I'll keep going.
Yes, speakers?
My name is Barbara Perlmutter. I'm a neighbor of the church, and many things have been said, and I think most of them are quite logical. My concern are the variances, which would represent a precedent that frightens me. I feel New York is selling out, and the church is an example. I think we should preserve it for some other use, and I think that can be done. That's really all I want to add.
Thank you.
Next speaker. If you want to speak, please come up to the podium.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Williamson. I've written a letter to the board in my opposition of what the developer's trying to do. That's my man of God there. Pastor Terry is someone that's lit a fire under me for quite some time from the day that I met him. His wife, First Lady, is the first person that gave me an opportunity to use these hands to renovate that church. I volunteered, I came in many days, we worked hard, we stayed within the zoning board's plans. Everything that was supposed to be done was done correctly. I want to thank this board because I've come here for several meetings, and I sit in the back and I watch, as Mr. Hilliard mentioned, the poker faces. You all have a tell, by the way. So.
Don't we all?
Yes, we do. And one of the things that stood out was that the attention to detail, and I'm going to single someone out, Commissioner Martinez, I love your attention to detail, how in each and every case that you manage to come through and see the things that other people don't see. I realize that my God is working right now because you all have decided that there are some issues that just don't make sense with this. And you've vocalized that in front of us. And we as the church, we would like to thank you. I thank you. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Luis Salazar. I'm an architect, and also I live at 370 Central Park West. At a recent community meeting in support of this landmark, Councilman Mark Levine made the statement that he was sick and tired of every square foot in New York City being looked at as a potential development site. And I support and I agree with that statement. There is a tragic contradiction in extracting a spiritual and educational center from a community and the assertion that priority should be given to the use of this building as luxury housing for private individual use for a few residents, ignoring the much larger needs of the same community. Even the very much anticipated physical restoration of this building has been transformed into a frightful watch of the destruction of its irreplaceable interior, and now plans to alter and destroy many elements of its precious exterior as well. Experts in stained glass windows have described the proposed removal of the magnificent stained glass windows as barbaric. Neighbors at 370 Central Park West can't reconcile that they are requested to sacrifice their quality of life and property values so that the proposed north-facing apartments have more and larger windows, even in excess of the minimum requirement for light and air in the multiple dwelling law. We would like to emphasize the great qualities of this individual landmark. As a magnificent historic building, as an exceptional structure with a very large capacity to allow for a diverse range of programs within its interior space, as an exemplary work of craftsmanship in all regards, attributes that not only make this building not obsolete, but very attractive, especially to institutions that seek to emphasize their permanence and prominence within the neighborhood with a commanding presence. Mr. Corby refers to the mandated grounds for a variance in his conclusion. And I quote, "Would be consistent with the spirit and intent of the MDL, would not adversely affect public health, safety, and welfare, and would do substantial justice," end quote. We fail to see the consistency with the intent of the MDL and have grave concerns about the health, safety, and welfare of the immediate neighbors in the course of this very invasive alteration. In the honest pursuit of justice, the intent of the MDL and the concerns of the community must be respected. The emphasis is that these legal requirements ensure not only the preservation of important standards, but also of a just and fair process. This is at the heart of the community's opposition to granting these variances, as it has been amply demonstrated that the developer is not entitled to them. The multiple dwelling law and the zoning resolution were very carefully crafted to establish restrictions and parameters that safeguard the public good from unjustified exploitation.
Could you wrap up your statement,
Yes.
please?
More importantly, none of these variances would be required if the building were to be restored for a new use or mixed use in keeping with its original purpose as a community facility. I ask you that these variance applications be rejected. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. I ask if you're going to speak, could you sort of be ready to speak, maybe get up to the
How many
top of the
more?
ramp so that there isn't a lot of lag.
How many more speakers? That's it?
3 in total.
3? Okay, thank you.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, commissioners.
Please state your name for the record.
My name is Antonia Rosselló from Salazar and Rosselló Architecture. The new plan presented to the Board of Standards and Appeals makes material changes to the plan that was approved by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. Although at first review, the proposed changes might seem conservative and minimal, in terms of the parameters and assumptions reviewed by the LPC, they are not. The new proposed plan eliminates residential square footage, adds new entrances, and most of all, allows for the separation of multiple uses and programs within the building. These are changes that demonstrate that there is much more flexibility and alternatives within the proposed plan than what was being presented. Given the fact that this developer is requesting so many variances that, if granted, would permanently alter such an important landmark and the well-being of the community, we respectfully request scrutiny not only of the financial aspects of this project, but on the design and planning as well. At the LPC hearings, exceptions were granted based on the assertions made by the developer of great constrictions imposed by the code requirements related to the increased number of residential units needed to make the project financially feasible. Removal of stained glass windows was deemed appropriate in the context of a claim of hardship. I trust and believe that if the commissioners at LPC would have known that the proposed plan did not represent the minimum relief and that there was much more flexibility in terms of multiple uses for this important building, they would have demanded for the developer to preserve the magnificent stained glass windows for a community use and would have restricted to a minimum the size and number of windows in the north facade. The LPC concerns and your concerns about this application are the same and deserve the respect that they merit given the importance of this individual landmark to New York City. We respectfully urge you to send this presentation project back to the drawing board. A truly successful project can be achieved. Not only can be done, it must be done. Thank you so much for all your time. I appreciate that.
Next speaker, please, speaker.
Hi, my name is Eric Fuster, and I work for Page Ayres Cali Architecture, and I'll be reading a letter from Page Cali. Dear Chair Perlmutter, 2 years ago, I wrote to the Landmarks Preservation Commission to voice my concerns regarding the adaptive reuse proposal for this individually designated landmark. At that time, my concern was limited to the extent of irreversible damage and alteration that will be caused by the comprehensive alteration of the interior that requires significant exterior changes and variances as well. While adaptive reuse is not uncommon for redundant churches, inserting a condominium is cramming multiple dwellings into a building designed as a single large open space. Aside from peculiar floor alignments, awkward window openings, and sizes that do not meet even minimal light and air standards, the proposed use concept remains flawed in so many ways. I'm bewildered by the applicant's testimony that luxury condos are the only financially feasible and viable use. I do not believe that the developer has either researched or applied any innovative architectural precedents as to potential uses. Here are a few repurposed churches that might give inspiration. The Church Brew Works in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, converted the worship space to a brewery and restaurant. South Williamsport, PA, Children's Indoor Playground. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, a laser tag science amusement center. In Saylorsville, Ohio, South River Winery. In the Netherlands, Bookstore Library. Troy, New York, is a frat house at RPI. Stockholm, Sweden, business startup, among others. So why am I so concerned about the outcome of the upcoming BSA review? This project will establish detrimental precedents that will now include exemption from not only zoning requirements, but building code standards regarding light and air. If a developer cannot comply with minimum threshold for residential standards, then the project simply does not work. While the plan may look good on paper, I doubt that the apartments will command the prices that the developer anticipates, with limited views, no remaining interior character of the former church, reliance on mechanically forced air and artificial light, which increases energy consumption unnecessarily when everyone is concerned about the environment and sustainability. The dilemma that this proposal poses is that any reuse is acceptable and better than a vacant building. So in conclusion, any adaptation of either the interior or exterior should be minimal and without the necessity to reduce or eliminate any building code standards and zoning requirements. Thank you.
Next speaker. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Just a little something I just want to say from the
Pull the mic a little closer to you, ma'am.
Just something I want to say from the heart. I'd be remiss if I didn't say anything. I'm Vanetta.
State your name.
Huh?
State your name.
Vanetta Smith. As a parishioner of 1 West 96th Street from 2001 until the building was sold in 2014. I was in the church a minimum of 2 to 5 days a week under the leadership of Pastor Terry Starks. The members in the congregation would be there daily without any complaints to assist in any events that the church had coming up. The youth loved coming to church. It was their place of comfort and peace, knowing that they were safe, even when it wasn't a regular service or youth night. Pastor Terry and First Lady Linda was there for us every day, anytime. The people love God and God's house. Pastor Terry would have God's house full in the sanctuary and in the balconies. The people came from near and far, even outside the tri-state area. The church is my community. The church is in my community. It is also a landmark that should remain so. To have a landmark in Upper Manhattan and Harlem across from Central Park is historic for the generations to come. To destroy our landmark, the building, the windows, any structure that would be criminal. Lives have been saved in this church, spiritually, physically, and mentally. What God did before, He can do again. God is a restorer. All we have to do is trust God and believe. Thank you for your time and opportunity to be heard. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioner. Sean Corsandy for Landmark West, and I thank you for your continued patience. 45 minutes ago, Kate Wood from Landmark West ended her time abruptly, so I just wanted to continue with her list
Appropriate.
of key people and organizations recommending a no vote. In addition to Manhattan Borough President Gail Brewer, we have City Council Member Mark Levine, New York State Assembly Member Danny O'Donnell, New York State Senator Tony Avella, Alice Cooney-Fringlenheisen, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Anthony W. and Lulu C. Wang, Curator of American Decorative Arts, Ulysses Grant Dietz, the New York Museum's Chief Curator and Curator of Decorative Arts, Paige Ayers-Cowley, Architect, Michael Henry Adams, Architectural Historian, the Historic Districts Council, the Municipal Arts Society, the Victorian Society of New York, the Beaux-Arts Alliance, the West End Preservation Society, the Defenders of Historic Upper East Side, the Friends of the Upper East Side Historic Districts, and many, many other citizens. Among them, Charles Warren, who's the architectural historian and author of Carrere and Hastings Architects. It's not just the monograph on them, it's the 2-volume Amazon Prime extra shipping cost box set. And I read from his letter, "The need for so many zoning variances demonstrates the unsuitability of the proposed function of the existing form. If zoning laws must be twisted to barely meet established minimum standards, we ought to ask, to what public purpose? Overriding the New York City zoning code should not be done lightly or for transient purposes. Doing so now will harm this great building, diminish the contribution it makes to the park, to the streetscape, and to the neighborhood. And it will chisel away at our city's history and the aesthetic qualities that contribute so much pleasure to urban life. But worse, it will set a bad precedent and send a message that zoning variances are available to abet real estate speculation." Thank you for your time.
Any more speakers?
No more speakers? That's it?
Oh, one more.
My name's Hannah Fleischer. I'm from Inside Associates, and I'm here to read a letter on behalf of the American Institute of Architects New York chapter, written by the president, Carol Lowenson, and the executive director, Benjamin Prosky. This letter says, "Dear Vice Chair Hinkson, on behalf of AIA New York and more than 5,000 members, we would like to register our support for the conversion of the individual landmark First Church of Christ Scientist into an appropriately scaled residential building. The proposed variances would permit the vacant building to be redeveloped, maintaining the historic structure. Like many other historic churches in New York City, the First Church has sat underutilized for years as its architecturally significant structure falls into disrepair. With property values and maintenance costs at an all-time high, places of worship that have fulfilled social needs for a century or longer must find ways to be preserved. These historic structures are integral to New York City's urban landscape and collective memory. The change in use will help to restore and preserve the building's facade while only minimally altering its overall appearance. The minor alterations of the building that were previously approved by the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission will not drastically modify the building's character. The conversion will, however, ensure that this former church receives necessary restoration work and continued maintenance. The proposal to convert the church at 361 Central Park West will protect the building's character in the neighborhood into the future. We support this application for conversion of the church to residential use and request for relief from specific measures of the multiple dwelling law. The public will benefit from the preservation of this individual landmark that will allow for its continued community use." I also just want to confirm, I have 6 other letters that have been submitted for the public record already, and I just wanted to confirm that you've received them. One is dated from May 18th, 2016, from Francis Halsband, who is a former commissioner of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission in favor of the application. I have another dated on May 18th, 2016, from Stephen Burns, also a former commissioner of the Landmarks Preservation Commission, in favor of the application. I have another letter of support from a former Landmarks Commissioner, Charles A. Platt, dated on November 23rd, 2015, in favor of the application. I have a letter from former Commissioner Sharita Paulson, former Commissioner and Chair of the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission, dated on November 30th, 2015, in support of the application. And I have a letter from May 16th, 2016, from Edward Molowski, former director of the Sacred Sites Program at the New York Landmarks Conservancy, in favor of the application. And a letter from Peg Breen, the president of the New York Landmarks Conservancy, dated November 20th, 2015, in support of the application. I also have a letter now speaking on behalf of a resident who I believe submitted this, but I'm not sure if it has been before you yet, in the neighborhood, Marion S. Krauskopf, and this...
If we have it, then...
Have you received this letter?
You can turn it in right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that you've already spoken, and we got that, so thank you. And if you have anything else that you've forgotten, just put it into writing, and we'll get it.
Certainly,
Thank you.
certainly, yeah.
Thank you. Any other speakers who have not spoken? That it?
Feel like
So,
the man behind the curtain there. I've been listening the entire
I know. You're back.
I haven't left. Thank you so much, Vice Chair and Commissioners, for your patience and your time and your consideration. During the deliberations, I texted our client. He very much wants to speak to the Reverend. We'd be happy to do that. And we hope to have a constructive dialogue, and if something works out, that's great. So we're going to try to have that conversation as soon as we possibly can. So I wanted to say that to you. I also would like to reiterate my request, if I may, which is that although our submission is over a month and a half or so old, the questions that were raised came up yesterday, and the questions that the commissioners had and we tried to respond to cogently today are today's questions. We'd like an opportunity to respond in writing, as I've asked, respectfully, because we think that we can do that in a way that is credible and that is open and truthful, which is what we've tried to be today. This is not an effort of trying to obfuscate or make things up. We are trying to do the best we can, and we have an honest and true and credible analysis. I think it's right, and we don't have, contrary to what's been said, and many things have been said, about this being an audacious project, about it being scary, about it being it's going to destroy the neighborhood. I find it remarkable in light of the fact that we're talking here about a minimal number of units in response to the board's concerns, about the fact that we have Landmarks approval to adaptively reuse this building in a sensitive way, that folks would react in such a fashion, but I appreciate and understand the concerns of neighbors as I always do. So in any event, I would very much like to provide our answers in writing. I think that you will find them compelling. We are responding quickly as a result of the recent questions raised. Thank you very much for your time. I don't think it's appropriate for me to belabor this by going through responses to all of the things that have been raised, many of which the board has already addressed. Thank you.
Mr. Corbier, we appreciate your submission, but as you've said, you've had 2 months to get it right. And I would venture to guess that we all here believe that we've seen and have heard your answers. And so, indeed, we are not going to entertain any further submissions.
Okay.
We will, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, please.
Please. I also think that we should close this hearing, and I think we are also going to go to vote.
Thank you very much.
So, motion to close.
Vice Chair Hinkson.
Aye.
Commissioner Montanez?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown? Aye. Commissioner Chanda?
Aye. And a motion to grant?
Vice Chair Hinkson?
No.
Commissioner Montanez?
No.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
No.
Commissioner Chanda?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Is one-
appreciate it. Thank you.
It's denied.
You guys want to take we're going to take a 5-minute break while the room clears and the commissioners go to the ladies' room.
Yeah. Here she comes.
The camera's on, so don't.
Yeehaw.
Mic is off. Okay. Mic's on?
Gordon, you're up.
Okay, back on the record, zoning calendar, item number 11, 318-14BZ, 1672 86th Street, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, John Ronan appearing on behalf of the applicant.
So you want us to take this off calendar because you have a possible new owner or your old owner's
I
left?
was very disappointed. As you know, this has been ongoing for quite some time, and I was looking forward to today being a decision day. But what's happened is our client is a tenant. They contacted us not too long ago, saying that they're not getting the revenue stream that they want from this location, and they're in talks right now with the owner of the property to surrender their lease. So they actually got to the point where the tenant got to the point where they did retain a contractor. I gave them my letter of February 10th, and the contractor was essentially going to use that letter as the scope of his work, but that contract was canceled, and the owner of the property, in your papers it says Lee Mills, which is correct. Lee Mills is one of the many subsidiaries of Getty Realty Corporation. So I was on the phone last night with Jim Craig, he's the, one of the VPs for Getty Realty. And he told me that their talks are probably going to end probably in November. That at that point, they'll reach the terms under which they will accept the surrender of the lease from Capital Petroleum Group. What I like to stress to them is that essentially you can't step into the same stream twice. Back in March, we were at the best point, the best posture this case has ever been in. We were set to get a decision. Even if they proceed with the work that they're supposed to do, that's not to say that some of the items that have already been in compliance will now revert back to a condition of non-compliance. So I'm urging them to go forward with it, and of course, the owner is urging Capital as well because they want to preserve the situation that they have. So what I would like to do, I don't want to keep this off the calendar too long. And since I've never actually requested a case be taken off calendar, so I don't know what the board considers a reasonable time.
Well, would it actually be just deferring decision until they get the owner to
I mean,
agree?
usually when we just defer decision, we give a date that we're going to defer decision. If we take it off calendar, then it's just a,
okay.
Yeah, sort of, we're not, you call us and ask us to put it back on, and we are trying to track these better and reach out. If it sort of lingers longer than 6 months, we've been...
Well, that puts me in the frame that I want.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking maybe like late November, early December.
Okay.
We could also defer it to a date in November or December. I mean, we could do that too.
Why don't we do that, and then if indeed you have, your owner, Big Guys Getty, say that they are going to do the work, you can pull it up from November or whenever, but you'll have something to work for.
Okay, so we're going to set a date then today?
Yeah, so why don't we look at 3, 4, 5, why don't we look at November 15?
Okay, and that would become a continued hearing date?
It would be a decision.
It would be a
Decision
decision
date,
date?
yes, okay.
And then you could come to us and say, we have the new owner, here's the construction, contracting, and all of that.
Yeah.
And it would be, in place with someone new,
Okay.
and then with all of the same
And I
conditions.
should have the demonstration, the photographic demonstration of compliance into you a month in advance of that, or?
Yeah.
Yes. See if you could get us something, let's see, what did I say, the 15th of November? 1, 2, can you get us something by the 25th of October?
I am going to make every effort. I want to get this resolved. So yeah, my answer is yes. If anything changes, I'll be in contact with the board.
Okay, sure.
Please be sure, if you haven't done so sooner, to reach out to Mr. Singer on the date of your submission, just to confirm that everything is going. It's a long adjournment, so let's make sure everyone's ready.
What's the decision date?
November 15th.
Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Continued hearing items, item number 12, 33013BZ, 2801 Brown Street, Brooklyn.
Let's see, we have an adjournment? So good. So we've been asked to adjourn to July 19th, so we'll have a submission date July 5th, that's 2 weeks, yeah.
Okay. Item number 13, 33114BZ, 2171 Ocean Parkway, Brooklyn.
Good afternoon, Lyra Altman from the Office of Lyra Altman. I watched your executive session last night and I heard your comments. To begin, I know there was a comment regarding TPPN 2012-008, a question whether we definitely complied. The calculations are actually shown on the seller plan.
No, I know, I just didn't check the calculation.
Oh,
I saw the calculation, but I didn't check his math, so.
I did check the math on that. It is correct. So I wanted to make sure that your board had seen that. Next, regarding the three-story buildings, there were a couple of comments yesterday that it would have been nice if we had submitted pictures of the building, and we actually had submitted pictures previously in the proposed streetscape. The streetscape photo montage actually showed all of those buildings, and it was referenced in the cover letter, which is why I didn't submit additional photos. If that wasn't clear from my cover letter, I do apologize, but I didn't intend to not provide you the photos. They were just already in the record.
I think, at least for me, I think the photos needed to show a true context of 3 stories within some sort of universe.
Well, the photo montage streetscape shows the entire block.
Right.
Is that not what you were looking for?
But, yeah, no, I think I at least was looking for something additional. I mean, the montage is kind of two-dimensionally, it's just 2 dimensions. It's because it's a picture.
Of course.
Right. But if you are taking a photograph of the area, say a little bit back, and you've got, your 3-story structure, and then you've got, 2 stories and 1 story and another, you get a sense of how that 3 stories is playing within.
Instead of taking the individual photos and putting them together.
Yeah, just to see an individual of a 3-story building.
The reason that it's done that way, and I've actually had this conversation with Ian Rasmussen from Urban Cartographics. I said, why don't we get like a panoramic or something? He said what happens is it starts to skew it, because of course the one in the middle looks bigger and they all kind of trail off like this.
Well, that's if you do.
Which is his concern, which is why he does picture, picture, picture. He does them from the exact same location. He effectively does this down
Understood,
block
but
to
I'm
keep a
talking
consistent
about
scale.
not
That's why he does
necessarily a
that.
photo montage in that vein. I'm just talking about, you're telling me a story, right? You're telling me that a 3-story building is within the context of whatever your universe is.
So perhaps I show an angle from the side so you can get a better view of
Show
it?
me more photographs that show the universe.
I could show more photos of the buildings, absolutely.
Vice Chair, I'm just looking at the streetscape diagram, and as I'm looking at it, and I just counted just now, altogether there are 26 buildings fronting the east side of Ocean Parkway, and of those, and these do include the building heights, of those 16 of them are actually, that is more than half, are below the height of 30 feet. So again, if we are looking at a context, if your question is regarding the context, this tells the story, the context is less than 30 feet, not the 5 buildings that are 36 feet.
Actually, if you look, what you will see on that is that there are 8 buildings on that block that are either 2.5 stories or 3 stories.
I'm not going by the height, I'm not going by the number of stories, I'm going the building heights that's listed here.
Okay.
And just going by the building heights, there are 60, I just counted, there are 16 buildings that are less than 30 feet high.
Okay, the other thing I would
Regardless of
point out-
whether they're with attic, without attic, it's the number that has been provided here.
Understood, and I would also point out, though, that the proposed height on this building and the proposed number of stories is actually permitted by the zoning resolution. So when the zoning text was drafted, it was determined that this would be the context of the area. The fact that some of the houses have not yet been built to their potential doesn't take away the fact that the zoning does permit this, and that this was determined by the drafters to be the context of the area, or should be the context of the area, as it may be.
I think that has not been clearly stated in any of the...
I believe it was stated on my last cover letter, but I will confirm, and if not, I will reiterate that statement.
I think all of us are having trouble with the 3 stories and how that is really characteristic of the neighborhood. So I think you need to make a better case out of it. In some way, you need to show us, the aerial photos were nice too, but I just, without an explanation.
That was intended for the rear yard. It actually wasn't intended for the 3-story argument.
I'm like, okay, this is great.
Yeah.
I get to see the bird's eye view.
Yeah, no, it wasn't
But-
intended for that purpose. I understand it doesn't
I
work there.
think you need to work on a narrative that tells a story of why 3 stories, and given the fact that, 30 feet is contemplated within the zoning, but why the three stories is a form that is within the character of your catchment.
Well, regarding the information you gave us regarding the 3-story buildings, I had to go through the BIS site. My complaint was that you didn't give us the backup, that they were permitted 3-story buildings. The examples you gave us, that without any variance, they were permitted by the DOB because it's within the zoning.
That is correct. And I did reference that in my letter, I believe, that where I got the information.
You said that, but I had to go to
DOB,
each BIS site and see that, there was an application for a 3-story building.
I wish the examiner had reached out. I would have been more than happy to provide you that information.
That's what I
apologize.
thought. It would have been just easier if you said, well, here's an application, it's an approved 3-story building, for 5 of them, right?
I'd
And
love to provide that
actually,
in the
even the
future.
one next door, which is the one with the stop work order, because they then proceeded to do an illegal rear enlargement.
Which had nothing to do, though, with the
With the
3-story height.
3-story
It was
building.
permitted.
Exactly.
I agree with you, there is a stop work order, but it doesn't affect the
The fact
height.
that they were a permitted 3-story.
It does affect, without a doubt, the rear yard. 2 different discussions. Agreed and understood.
Pardon me, Commissioners, Counselor, just in terms of maintaining for our record the board's consistent position, neighborhood character is determined by that which exists, not that which is zoned for or which can be done by special permit. That's something that the board's been very consistent on. I just wanted to make sure that that was reflected in the record for this matter as well.
That's true, but this homeowner could go to the Department of Buildings without the rear yard extension, perhaps, and get a permit, an as-of-right permit for a 3-story building.
And we do have floor area left. We're actually not asking for floor area waiver, so it is not something that we would be prohibited from doing tomorrow.
Right.
There was also a question regarding the new joists that were going to be put in, extending 2 feet, right?
Because it's not shown on the section.
The new joists aren't shown. I will have that fixed.
And you didn't really explain how you're going to just put in this 2-foot section and
I spoke with
support
the
it.
architect this morning, and he said what he's planning on doing is he's planning on having new joists sistered up with the old joists to extend over. He said if you'd like, he'd be happy to provide a letter to you.
Okay.
Mr. Shonda, did you have questions about the double height space in the front to reduce?
I think my concern is that there is, first of all, there's 2 set of staircases. There's this double height bedroom in the front, and instead of extending in the rear, especially when the abutting rear yards are not the standard, most of the rear yards in this area tend to be much deeper than 20 feet. Why can't the bulk in the back be in the front and occupy the double height space? That would address the height issue, that would address also taking the bulk from the rear, which is not a typical along that block frontage, to address that. That's really why I was raising that.
We actually spoke about it last night, the architect and I, based on your comments at yesterday's executive session. And what he said to me was that that is actually not a double height space. It is certainly greater than a 1-story, but it is not a double. And the problem is that if you were to pull it all the way across, he's concerned about complying in the front. As you see, there is a sky exposure plane that he cannot protrude into and your board cannot waive. So he has to respect those setbacks in the front of the building. As a result, he had to reduce the front. He did increase the height of the 2 stories that are there. Each one of those floors has a little bit more of a generous ceiling height, but he would not get 3 full stories in there. That is why, that doesn't help, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, the living room is, I'm looking at the living room height is much more than the other ones, if that height is reduced.
I want to say it's 4 feet, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, the dimension of the living room height is not given here, I'm just...
Correct. This is based on my conversations with him.
Yeah, it's probably around 12 or 13 feet, or probably 14 feet even. Yeah.
So I think we also had issues concerning the adjacent buildings, and let's get into the rear yard, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah, I thought your rear yard argument was, you just really gave us 2 aerial photos. And you really can't use either adjacent building in your rear yard argument, because both of them are illegal. One of them has a stop work order, the other one has violations for a rear enlargement.
Correct. I would point out, though, the board is continuously asking us, what is adjacent, what is adjacent, what is adjacent? That's the character. I had to disclose to your board what is adjacent. That's something you've asked us repeatedly.
Okay, but we can't really rely on illegal construction.
Understood. And in response to your question yesterday at the session, you were asking, are there other BSA approvals in the area? What other BSA approvals in the area? What have they given? You wanted to know your context. There are 3 BSA approvals in the area. One is for 2057 Ocean Parkway, which I had already mentioned. That was provided with a rear yard of 20 feet, approved by your board under calendar number 12 of 13 BZ. There's also one at 2153 Ocean Parkway, which is under calendar number 25108 BZ, which is again a 20-foot rear yard. And lastly, there is Gravesend Neck Road, it's number 705, calendar number 8 of 12 BZ, also a 20-foot rear yard. So there were 3 BSA approvals in the area. All 3 of those BSA approvals were actually granted 20-foot rear yards.
And have you put that on a map somewhere or on a plan?
I have not. I've just obtained it. I can give you the information on where they are just for the record. I can gladly submit it to you on a map as well.
I think so that we can, and then see what the context of the rear yards were on those cited cases.
Well, one of them is actually on this block. So
that's fine. That should be easy
clear.
for you then. You just, put that on your rear yard analysis and say this was a 20-foot rear yard granted by the board. But I think just so that we get a full picture of what the area rear yards are compared to any special permits. So yeah, you'll have to address the issue of the illegal construction. And if it's illegal, then you don't really have that as a...
Understood, but
that is an argument.
The point is, I'm not saying that we should have it because they have it. I'm saying that we're not blocking anything around us. We're not negatively impacting open space. Many of the other concerns this board typically has, there is no open space in those 2 yards to be concerned about.
I think some of us had concerns about the 3 stories at the rear. So I would like to see you pull it back a bit at the rear at the 2nd floor, right? Because you've got 3 full stories. So at the 2nd floor, maybe you can pull back a little bit off of there. Give us, I know, but give us something. Because as I said, the adjacencies are illegal. So one would then have to think, well, if it wasn't built there, what would it be? It would be a 30-foot rear yard. So go back to the drawing board a little bit, give us something.
I'll speak with the architect to see what he's willing to say.
The rear yard diagram does not show a preponderance of 20-foot side yard or rear yards. It's mostly in the 40s, and so I don't think an argument has been made yet.
I understand that it doesn't show preponderance, but I would point out that that's actually not one of the findings for the special permit. It doesn't say there has to be a preponderance. It just says character of the neighborhood, and it was determined when they drafted this section that it would be better to put any additional space towards the back. That was the discussion when they drafted this section, saying, well, the character of the neighborhood is defined by what goes on in front of these buildings. Let's take this extra space that we're giving these families to get them to stay in the community, and let's put that space in the back where it doesn't impact the streetscape. And that was really the discussion point at the time that this text was passed. And so now the board is telling us to put it somewhere else, and the problem is that's why this 20-foot rear yard was originally provided for in this special permit, was so that that bulk could be placed in the back.
Well, I think that we understand that bulk can be placed elsewhere, but I also think that we're sort of charged to look at character in a little broader sense.
Understood.
And that is now taking the form of what the rear yard context is. So without the ability to utilize those adjacent buildings as some kind of a benchmark, I think we're going to have to see something that would respond to if you had like a 30-foot rear yard on each side.
Or whatever would be legal there.
Or whatever would be legal.
Now, the buildings to the rear are multiple dwellings?
I believe they are.
Yeah.
And they're 3 stories?
No, they're tall. They may be
They're 2?
Let me double check. I don't want to say for sure, double checking that one. Bear with me just a moment, I have that information in my file.
There are 3 or 4 stories.
Buildings immediately behind are 2 stories, it looks like,
they're
except the
2
corner. The
stories.
corner is 3 stories on V and 7.
Okay.
Okay. They look taller, but
They do.
They may be a tall 2 stories,
Yeah,
but they
they're
are.
a little bit raised from the ground, so, and the high floor.
So that should be considered in your argument to us.
Of course.
And I'm not sure what their rear yards are. They don't look very deep.
36, 35.
So I have that in the
Really?
rear diagram.
Yeah, they've got nice rear yards.
Okay.
So do we have any further questions? Did we cover everything we needed to cover?
There was one other question.
Mentioned about the side yards.
Oh, I thought
The
there was one other
totals.
question.
Oh, yes.
Regarding the use of the regulations, I know there was also a question.
Oh, yeah.
I don't wanna not- I don't wanna miss
When
that
I
one.
was reading through the sub-district regulations and the district regulations, I realized that instead of there's a boundary, district boundary, that I guess it's the sub-district, you're really
Yes,
looking
the rear
at it
5
as
feet.
an R41.
That only applies if the building's actually in the space, because it only applies for the height and the setback, which is irrelevant because the building isn't there.
Understood, but not for your building, but where you have put that line, it says R5 and R5 on either side. One is a sub-district, so it really should be
Understood.
R41, because that's how it's going to get treated.
Understood
on the
now.
other
I was
side of your-
going to say, I know it's been treated that way, but it didn't matter because of the height and the setback. Our building isn't in that
Exactly,
space.
but just to be correct.
So fixed line to say R41 on the plot plan.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to.
Just to be correct about it.
Not a problem, I'll be happy to
And-
change that. Or have the architect change that, actually.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, the side yard, you heard my comment about the side yard.
I wasn't exactly sure about the comment. I actually have it written down here verbatim. I still wasn't exactly sure what the comment was. I apologize.
Well, this case that you cited, it was not, one, it wasn't really clear to me whether that 9-inch side that you're referencing as having 8 feet between buildings. The other side you show, and it shows on those drawings on 107, whatever it is, it shows that there's 8 feet between on that side, but there's
Okay.
nothing that says whether or not it's 8 feet on the other side, which is part of your argument.
Actually, we
Right.
provided the 8 feet between buildings. We never had that discussion.
In the case that you cited.
Right, but we actually provided the 8 feet between buildings. That wasn't being used for that argument at all.
Then I read it totally wrong. I thought you were utilizing the argument.
No, we
that
provided you
would
the
have
8 feet
been on
between
both
buildings. We
sides.
modified the plan. You were concerned about the 8 feet between buildings. We modified accordingly.
This is good. But as I think the chair had noted prior to this, that one case does not a argument make.
It's been done repeatedly as far as the reducing the total side yards. I can show you many cases where it's been done. What she had said was she hadn't seen it in a resolution. She said looking at the plans may not be enough, so I found a case that actually has it written in the resolution as well. If you'd like, I'd be glad to provide you whole stack of cases where it was done on the approved plans.
Why, knock yourself out, but why don't you give us a couple more that are dispositive of this board's ability to do that? Make them relevant to your case.
Of course. I would only use comparable cases similar to the one that I provided.
So staff has briefed this issue.
Microphone's not on?
Staff has briefed this issue and concluded that the minimum of 13 feet must be maintained.
Well, here it would be 10.
10, oh, it's the wrong.
Because it's a narrow lot.
It's a narrow lot, and they have,
Right.
but they also have an existing
Complying
non-compliance. So they were
Right.
never
side
going
yard.
to make
So the
13
minimum
feet.
would be 5, but they're over 5.
But they're over 5
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
So, I mean, it's a question of, even their total at present is not 10. It's a little bit less than 10, and they want to reduce one of the side yards.
Right.
And whether we
Within
would
what is
permit that.
permitted for that side yard.
Right.
Right.
So it's a little bit more than just the 8 feet, and maintaining 8 feet.
Of course, we gave on the 8 feet, we understood your point.
Non-compliance, so.
Although the board previously had not looked for 8 feet between buildings, I will tell you numerous cases, we didn't disagree with you on that. We gave you the 8 feet. That wasn't a discussion. This one, we feel very strongly that we have a case on.
Okay, so give us some more cases that deal with the decrease from an already non-compliant.
We have one non-complying yard, one complying yard, already under the required total side yards, going to a smaller total side yards.
Hit all the points.
Certainly can provide you many cases.
Okay.
How many would your board like?
Whatever you feel that is going to make your case.
I'll submit quite a few.
Anything else? Oh, are there speakers? Oh, okay.
Just an interested spectator.
Okay. Hello, interested spectator. I hope you had a good day. All right. So we don't have anything else to add. How long do you think it would take you to maneuver all of this?
Just look through all of your comments as far as some of them will be very easy to provide. A few of them, looking at the rear yard, will take a little bit of time.
Do you need after the July 4th holiday? Yeah.
Well, what would the submit, I would say, as far as submission is concerned, I think the architect, I should give him probably 3 weeks to review the rear of this building and really analyze.
That would place a submission around the 5th, but that's the holiday, so I don't know if that time frame includes somebody going away or...
It's fine.
Okay, so...
We'll make it happen.
Submit on the 5th, and we'll see you on the 19th. That make sense?
It does.
Cool.
Good.
Thank you very much.
This concludes the public hearing for June 2nd, 2016. Thank you.